Hello there, commanders, and welcome to another episode of SUNTZU podcast. Today with me I have Astolfo,
Hello, everyone.
Foxgod,
What's up?
and Arklinon.
Hey, people.
And we're going to talk about general balance issues that we have with the game, some mechanics, and then since closed beta is approaching us, it's only 1 month away at the time of the recording. We are going to share some of our predictions and questions we might have about that. So, let's start with the balance, and let's start with elephants. What do you guys think about elephants and their balance, whether they sit within the overall meta, how strong they are, etc., especially considering in the light of the new game mode?
And nobody's going to say they're the elephant in the room.
No, I was waiting for you guys to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, me too, man.
That's
Well,
a
in
very
theory-
great start. Everybody is too
Okay,
shy to start.
Okay, so theoretically speaking, because of the conquest game mode, it's important to stay on one point, and elephants being, well, elephants, kind of hit point sacks, should be able to hold a point very well until they see some javelins. With that in mind, they might be very, very strong, all things considered, because they're also relatively fast. Because of this game mode, I'm afraid they might be a little overpowered, so some tweaks may be required.
I mean, in my opinion, since day one as a infantry player, like, I lose models, I lose damage, they don't lose damage as they go lower health. Like, I've never enjoyed that trade.
That's a good point. Yeah, they fundamentally do have that mechanic.
Well, I also agree with that they are overpowered, although for different reasons. And also, it's not like they were balanced before and now they're only overpowered in this new game mode. I think they were overpowered before, and now because of the new game mode, they are even more overpowered.
Yeah, just
Because-
strategically.
Yes, because they are very, very good at controlling the points and rather getting the points or interrupting the point capture. Holding, not really, because you can't hold the enemy units away from the point, because they're just going to fight you on top of it if they want to. But as an elephant, 9 times out of 10 you can take that fight, right? And it's rather the enemy that cannot take the fight, that needs to run away from you if you are approaching the point. And even if the javelins approach, well, you can just chase off the javelins. And we have to remember that it's a team game, right? So it's not that elephants are alone and not supported by anything. And then the enemy
That's
gets all kind of repertoire of mixed arms to deal with those elephants. So elephants are definitely above average when it comes to strength, utility. So yeah, it's a very good unit to have. And I'd rather have elephants than pretty much any other unit in my team. Obviously, not only elephants, but who knows? 30 elephants would be funny.
One other
Please, Astolfo, go.
One other thing that elephants do really well is not only can they dictate the fight because they can stampede through like melee screen units and stuff like that. They can stomp you, displace your units, and things like that. But there's no like route mechanic for them or take bonus damage or anything like every other unit, right? If I get routed, I'm going to be punished for it. And this is all exponentially worse. Everything we've said, the lower you go down in the tiers, because you just don't have the damage to get through them. I mean, sure, in tier 8, Vengeance can slice through them. Yeah, but in tier 5, when they open up, my God, if you don't have javelins or pikes running around, they just run over your army.
Yeah, the elephants are the only unit in the game that can just straight up walk through other units and not give a fuck about it, unless those are pikes. But every other unit, they just straight up ignore. And yeah, if you want to hold a point against elephants, you can, because they're just gonna walk through and ignore you. You want to protect your ranged units, you can. They're gonna walk through and start chasing the ranged units. Alright, and ranged units either run away or die. And they need to, commit so much resources to just stop an elephant player. So in order to stop an elephant player, you need maybe coordination between 2 or 3 players of your own team. And then that's 3 versus 1, and then do the other 2 equivalent players from the team of elephants they get free reign. They can do whatever the hell they want, and they can support the elephants. So yeah, that's why elephants are so strong. They were very strong before, and now because of the new game mode, because of the addition of capture points, they got an additional strength at what they're good at.
They also make spears look super derpy when they're in phalanx, and they just like move through them, and then your phalanx like runs forward, backward, trying to like stare at the elephant.
Yeah, I mean, they did address that, right? So between patch, the first Pioneer patch and the second Pioneer patch, we got a slight tweak to elephants. And one of the nerfs was that spear units are now getting bonus versus large, or maybe it was I think it was specifically against elephants, not just versus large. Where spears deal 1.25, I think, damage to elephants, but that doesn't really hurt. That didn't change anything. All Germanicus with Vengeance will always be better in terms of infantry versus elephants, so it's not like spear suddenly became a counter to them. But anyway, those are all the reasons, right, that's why elephants are broken. So let's maybe talk about some solutions. How would you guys fix, how would you nerf the elephants, or maybe buff all their units or whatever? Go on, Arcleon. How would you fix them?
Who?
You. How would you fix them, the elephants?
Very simple. Add morale. Add more, because elephants, despite their size, are actually very scaredy animals. So even when you do train them right, you can't really train that fear out. You know, the whole stereotype with mice, whatever. But they are very scaredy animals. So
I mean, Mythbusters did check it. They are actually afraid of mice for some reason.
Yes. Well, yeah. Definitely. So add morale to them. Like if they are overwhelmed, if they take too much damage within too short of a time, they should rout. They should start running amok. They should, running amok was a mechanic in the old Total War games, and it was kind of awesome. It made elephants an unpredictable force on the battlefield. So that would be fix number one. The other thing would be is to test them very well. Like, honestly, this game will live or die on its Q&A department. And yes, we will have to be a bit of a Q&A department ourselves, but this balancing is going to be essential. It needs to be tested. The builds need to be tested. So people will need to come up with some specific builds, using them and countering them, because a unit is only as good as it is supported, as we have seen in all the card games. A card, it can win the game outright, but it's not going to be important if there is no synergy with that card. And right now, what we're complaining of is the combined arms. So combined arms is what makes it difficult. The fact that elephants can get support and can synergize so well with so many units is a problem that needs to be reduced. Anti-large, I would definitely add that to spears, to pikes. That could be important, or maybe make our arrows do more damage, make elephants have a lot less armor on the back. So that could be a good thing. Kiting them is a lot of fun. We must not forget the fun factor in the game. And kiting elephants was one of the most fun things I was doing in the previous versions. Kite them out, hit them from the back, they can't do anything, lower armor from the back. And I think combining all of these solutions, namely add morale to elephants, have them run amok, test them to see how they interact with combined arms and make stat changes based on that. And 3, make them take a lot more damage, or maybe even morale damage from the back.
Okay, so I'd like to address the points. First, the thing that you said, that the game will live and die by its QA department. Obviously, it is going to be important, but I think marketing department will be more important, and since it has a lot more things to step up.
I mean, that's pretty much a given.
Yes,
that's
like
but one of those.
QA department is of balancing, right? We are complaining about balance mainly in this podcast, but let's also say it outright, almost at the very beginning of the podcast, right? that the balance in Total War Arena is really good. Those are the exceptions that we're talking about
Yes.
now that still need fixing or slight tweaking, but there are still issues. And elephants, kind of pun not intended, there's quite a big issue. Although it's not really a pun, but whatever. It's just a shit joke. I really like the idea of them losing morale over time as they're fighting, so that would mean that you need to try to have a hit and run with them, or maybe hit and run through in case of elephants, because them being able to run through is, I think, something that you need to keep, because that just deals so well with camper teams, especially with heavy artillery, which we're going to touch upon later. If there's a heavy artillery position that is heavily defended with units, with stakes, as long as those aren't pikes, you can just walk through them and walk on top of the heavy artillery if it doesn't run away.
Let me interject on something real quick on this. Conquest mode that was added, I believe, fundamentally solves this problem as long as we have balanced heavy artillery. Because if you have a team that is sitting on 1 or 2 points, where there are 3 more points to go, the enemy can simply cap those and win. So that pretty much negates that whole thing. So camping might not be as big of a deal as we were used to.
Yeah, camping in that sense, right? But more like just defensive positions. And they're really good at breaking them. And yeah, I do agree with that, yeah, the new game mode definitely helps a lot with the camping issue. Let's take, for example, Turtle Book Forest, right? You have such a great advantage in your spawning points. Why the hell would you ever abandon those advantages and go and fight, right? So if both Turtle Book Forest teams were, smart and wanted to go about winning the battle in the most efficient way, they would never fight each other because they would both just stay in their spawns. But the introduction of those cap points actually forces the teams to fight for unfavorable positions.
Yep.
Right? Give up the favorable position for actually having the points, which is what ultimately wins you the game. So that helps with it. But good, I had a counter, but I forgot what to. So I'll let you, Arcleon, continue, and maybe it will come back to me, or anybody else maybe wants to pick up Fox Yours also.
So yes, that's also something we need to consider, that the new game mode fundamentally changes the game, and I think this change is very positive. Before we started, I was talking about Guild Wars 2 and how they changed their PvP, and the only mode they have is Conquest. So I was very skeptical at the beginning. I was like, just Conquest, no team deathmatch. Like, what's the point? This will feel so unrealistic. And to an extent, it did. In time, it really grew on me because camping is no longer viable. Holding a point becomes a lot more viable. Throwing people around, crowd control, kind of those strategic maneuvers becomes a lot bigger factor when what you're trying to do is not just kill, which killing is still the most important thing, is to hold a point. It rewards the smarts and looking at the overall strategy. And I love the biggest factor, I will say, that made me fall in love with the Conquest mode is this. You have a entrenched enemy position, or you have a juggernaut just running through your forces. A force of very good players, very good units just went there to assault. In other words, a doom stack, so to speak. You cannot beat that. What you can do, you can outsmart it. You can go around the map, be like, okay, you want to cap the point B? You can cap the point B. We're just going to get point A, C, and D. Okay, you got B. Okay, now we're just going to cap right behind you. So you can outmaneuver your opponents that you cannot fight head on. Now, speed has become one of the major problems, which I think would make a great segue into talking about cavalry.
No. I still don't know how that's all related to elephants. Apart from that, the speed elephants also have significant speed.
Yes.
But what I wanted to say is that I remembered what I wanted to counter you on. So you mentioned kiting as a tactic against elephants, right? So yeah,
Yes.
in the past it was viable, but I mean, viable in air quotes. But what you give up through kiting is terrain, which was an issue before
Yes.
and is issue even more now. So if you want to kite the elephant, keep running away from it, which you very often just have to, because of just how strong the elephants are. They don't go down quickly enough, or cannot be
let me
stopped
clarify
through melee units. Let me finish. All right.
Yeah.
So if you just use the elephants to force the enemy away, well, the other units in your team just cap the point that you use the elephants to force the enemy away from. So that is another very good thing that elephants are good at. That, well, previously was also relevant, but now is even more relevant and makes the elephants even stronger in this game mode. And therefore, something needs to be done about elephants, such as, being able to route them, or just make the elephants take more damage, or make them less potent at just pulling through units, like make them suffer some kind of pull through penalty, just like other units do. Because if you try to pull infantry through infantry or cavalry through infantry, that unit is going to die because you're trying to pull through. Elephants don't give a shit. So I would maybe change it so that elephants do give a shit. They still survive, all right, but they take considerable damage. So they pay for the fact that they can pass through a unit with their HP, instead of just being able to just do it without any punishment, pretty much.
Yes. Now let me clarify on the whole kiting element. When you kite, under normal circumstances, you're right. But when I'm talking about kiting an elephant, what I'm talking about is the elephant follows one unit and exposes its back, so my two other units can shoot it to kill it.
Yes, but there are also 3 elephants, not 1. Ha ha ha, get wrecked.
Yes, exactly. So at that point, you need combined arms to deal with it. But unfortunately, that's pretty much the only viable tactic to deal with elephants, to separate them from the enemy and then divide and conquer. Not the ability, but the strategy.
Yeah. So you either need 2v1, right, or 1v1. I mean, javelins are supposed to be counter to elephants, but they aren't.
Yeah,
1v1 javelins cannot beat elephants, and that's it.
Correct.
Pretty much nothing
I would like
can
to
beat
propose
1v1
a question.
elephants, apart from pikes. But elephants can just run around pikes because pikes are not going to catch them. As
Yeah,
for
when you're
Can a man outrun an elephant? No.
no.
unless he's on a horse, but then it's the horse that's outrunning.
Yes.
But it's not a cavalry.
So
Deals any
technically,
real
they
damage.
shouldn't be able to kite an elephant at all.
Well, yeah, that's the cool mechanic that we have with the missiles actually weighting down the elephant. So if it has fucking 100 javelins in its ass, it's going to slow down.
Oh yeah, I was joking.
Yeah, it is a really good mechanic, but the slowdown is not significant enough, right? Because it is supposed to help the range in its kite to the elephants. But
it drops off very fast.
Yeah, it drops off very fast, and it's not strong enough. So the elephants, the slow that they receive is not significant enough, and the javelin still cannot deal. So I would just increasing the number, right? Instead of the slow factor per one javelin being, I don't know, I have no idea what it is, right? But let's say 0.08, whatever, right? Make it to 0.1 or whatever. And yeah, each javelin slows the speed by 0.1. Just change the values. I have no idea what the values are, but I know they're too small at the moment. So yeah, that's one of the many solutions to that. And let's move on to the unit type that we talked about a lot while talking about elephants, which is pikes. And how pikes are currently imbalanced. Anybody wants to take it away to start with?
I would like to touch on something about it. Pikes for me, especially because I was playing at a really high MS. I know this isn't really game balance, and there's a ton of things we're going to talk about pikes throughout this, but at my MS, pikes, even when I played them, were OP, right? Like, either I was lagging and the guy didn't see me put him down, or I was going to attack someone who had him up and my MS was like, nope, they're actually down. So that was really frustrating. Another thing that was super frustrating on them, I get that like there's no real pike commander. I mean, there is in Leonidas and there isn't. But, you know, just using rapid advance on them as, you know, if you're barbarians, it's no issue at all, right? But if you're playing heavy Roman infantry, it will literally outrun you, run you down from behind and stab you in the butt. And you can't do anything about it, really. I mean, I guess you could outplay it, right? But I mean, that was when I was at 60 MS, right? Again, I can't just turn around and charge the guy while he's rapid advancing me in a split second to get into combat anymore because I'm playing at really high MS.
Yeah, for me, the main issue with Pikes is that the counter to Pikes, right? If you encounter a Pike unit, you need to flank it, you need to route it, right? Hit it from behind, or also, again, with combined arms. But it's very similar to how the issue is with elephants. In order to defeat a Pike player, you usually need more than one player of your own team, because there's no like a direct counter to Pikes. If you walk up to them with javelins, raise shields, or fight in the shade if they're on Leonidas. They want, well, if it's Leonidas, 100% missile block chance, goodbye. If it's raise shields, they're gonna have close to 100, or maybe even depending on a Pike unit, they will have 100. So yeah, you always need combined arms to deal with Pikes, and it's also still very difficult because the theory, right, is okay, you walk up to them with a melee unit and a ranged unit to one Pike unit. So it's already 2v1 at least that you need to deal with them. You have the ranged unit start firing onto the Pike unit, so it is forced into raise shields, right? Then you attack with a melee unit, so it is forced to go Pike phalanx, and it's very easy to go Pike phalanx. Well, the melee player on the enemy team needs to be very wary of when the Pikes are dropped and avoid the Pike phalanx, so withdraw before the phalanx is dropped on him, but also needs to get close enough to force the Pike player to use the Pike phalanx. So it is way harder for the player trying to outplay the Pike phalanx to outplay it than the Pike phalanx to basically play perfectly. So after let's say the melee player succeeded, Pikes are dropped into Pike phalanx. So then a ranged unit can start actually chipping in and dealing damage, but also if it's just from the front, the missile block is still pretty high, but you can start doing some damage. So then the player either just keeps taking damage from the ranged unit, which takes a lot of time to kill, or he goes again into raise shields, and then you have that few seconds of opportunity to charge in before he can switch to Pike phalanx again. And the problem here, and it's very easy to fix, well, it wouldn't be the entire fix, but the problem itself is very easy to fix. Just increase the window. So if the Pike player changes from raise shields to Pike phalanx or vice versa, instead of it being a 6-second window, and it's not also always because it depends on when they use the abilities, whatever. It's too much details. Basically increase the window and make it always be that window to, I don't know, 10 seconds instead of being 6, and also not always it being 6. So that the melee player that has to coordinate with a ranged player, you know, they actually have some kind of outplay potential that is more reliable than playing everything perfectly. Well, the Pike player has a very easy time of countering that, even if it's 2v1. Another issue, right, is if you don't have a ranged unit, how do you deal with that? Well, you need to flank and route them. But the way Pike phalanx units, you know, first melee detection and also unit coherency, which we're also going to touch upon later. How it works is that once the Pikes start spinning, their flanks are all over the place. And either you get lucky and you suddenly start flanking him and he routes, or you get unlucky and even though you clearly flanked him and surrounded him, he doesn't get flanked at all for some reason. Because how flanking detection works is also not very reliable. So let's say you attack the Pike unit from its side, you have 10 men in the front row, and 9 of them are hitting the Pike from the side, but one of them is hitting them from the front, and the game can be like, that's not a flank because there's one guy hitting them from the front. So I'm not going to count that, and that unit is not going to rout. Something such a thing happens, and it goes into overdrive once the unit starts spinning and it's all over the place and no longer has a clearly defined front, left, right, and rear flank. It just becomes a sort of like circle of just a mob, a random circle of whatever the hell the units are. And you can flank that, and it just keeps spinning and killing you, and he was like, oh, come on, I'm surrounding him, fucking rout already. And Pikes are like, nope, spin go brrr, and your rings go as well.
Well, I think another thing
so
too, right?
Fixed, yeah, essentially.
The amount of control they give too is like, on a point, you're going to hold a point really well with them. Heck, you could just make a triangle with the things on most points.
Or
in
like
a city,
wall. You can literally keep pushing your back into the wall because once you're in pike phalanx, pathfinding works differently. So if you have your back against the wall, and let's say the wall is a cliff that you can climb onto, if you just tell the unit to go on top of that cliff, it won't just try to go around as every other unit would. It will try to back itself into that cliff and basically face through it, which it sometimes will, which is a bug. That's how Pike, for example, got on top of the temple at Thermopylae, the famous screenshots. Yeah, which is another issue. You can just grind your ass towards a cliff, and there's no way to flank you, essentially. Unless you're multi-adders and you can apply somehow left and right flank in that situation, which is extremely difficult to do. And then fear on top of it, and then you will ride the pike phalanx. But if it's Leonidas, haha, battle cry, nope. Or it's hold the line now. I don't know. They have skills that increase morale, or even share wine, which also increases morale and counters fear.
Yeah. Well, also, like I said, with control, right? It gives, like, if I'm an infantry player, right? Like we touched on this, right? You need 2 people to beat a pike player, basically, which is a huge advantage to begin with, right? Let's say I'm an infantry player, and I'm not going to say I'm the slowest infantry player. I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm a heavy infantry that just can't do anything, right? Well, I'm not going to be a super fast barbarian, right? Let's just go with like a medium infantry. So like a Carthage sword after tier 5, obviously their tier 5 is very fast, but like an after tier 5 Carthage sword or just medium Roman swords, right? So if I'm coming up against a pike player in a city, I've already lost. I need to have a range player where I just can't touch him. Like he fills up the whole road, and I either spend 2 minutes going around him to flank him, or I go to another
flag. Around in 2 seconds, so negated.
And then I can go to another flag, right? I can just reposition. Well, I just wasted 1 minute to 2 minutes of running across the map while he's sitting there capping points. And then, let's say best case scenario, he's not in the street that he can block all of, or he's out in the wilds or something like that, right? Like plains or a forest or something, right? And which he shouldn't be there because he's has a brain, but let's say he is for some reason, and I can actually flank him. Well, he can just backpedal away, helicopter the pikes into me, even if I somehow get that crisp side charge on him. In that 1v1 scenario, he has 3 units. Worst case scenario, he can just butt them up against each other and make a triangle that I can't touch. Sure, you could say, well, you can go around him, right? And it's like, but it just, not only does he have so much map control, he just has player control, right? Like, it's like elephants too, right? You have to have 2 people to take them down, right? So you have 2 people tied up here for how long, right? Especially pikes who can survive for a long time with raised shields. Let's say I get that perfect charge in, right? Like my archers had him get into raised shields. I get in there and I'm actually fighting him. Well, if he's Leonidas, he just shield bashes me and drops him anyway. And I'm like, so I did all this work to get into melee to finally counter these things, and the dude presses one button and then lawn mows half my unit because he has no, fatigue or anything going at that point. And, he just drops the pike, and every model of mine that's touching his just not only gets pushed back, even though they're already a foot away from the guy and there's no room to drop the pike, he just gets lawn mowed because pike damage.
Yep. And that's another factor that I wanted to touch upon, is that you know, if you fuck up as a player trying to deal with a pike unit, unless you get that perfect charge and rout the unit immediately, or not allow them to shield bash after you do the melee plus ranged combo tactic. But if you fuck up and pike player gets to drop pike phalanx on top of your unit, you suffer heavy casualties, right? So there's not like, oh, okay, well, I'll get him next time. There won't be, well, in this new game it will be because you'll respawn, right? But you're losing a lot of men, a lot of momentum, a lot of everything. Well, the pike player, if he fucks up, well, in ideal world, right, when the shit is fixed, he wouldn't have the shield bash into pike phalanx, right? But as long as he gets the pike phalanx off, he's mostly fine. Even if he gets flanked and doesn't get immediately routed within 2-3 seconds, yeah, he'll just spin and be fine and still deal a lot of damage while fighting back. And yeah, as we said, they're very similar to elephants in that sense that they need 2 versus 1 at least to be dealt with, and that also frees up a player from the pike player to do something else, to flank you, for example, to intercept you as you're trying to deal with pikes or cap your point. And the pikes, as opposed to elephants, instead of being really good at making people run away from them and trying to cap the points, pikes are really good at holding the points. And well, they're also very good at making people run away because nobody can face them if they approach you frontally, right? But by moving forward, they are a little bit exposing themselves to flanking, but not that much. Especially if you're talking about a map like Salernum. Like if you just plant a pike unit, one pike unit in Salernum, in one of the streets, that's huge map control, basically for free, and it doesn't require that much skill. You just planted a pike unit in a street and that's it. Just make sure you switch between ratios and pike phalanx correctly and you're fine. So that's why that window of opportunity that is created by switching those abilities needs to be higher and consistent, so that, you know, players can actually use that tactic. It's still a very difficult tactic. It requires coordination between 2 different players, which not always you will have, because if it's not your party member that you're on voice that you can actually coordinate it with, it is very difficult to coordinate that with a random person, because you have no idea if that is also what that person wants to do, or if he even is aware of that way of dealing with pikes in the first place. So yeah, well, pike player, you just solo, I'm just gonna stand here and you have to deal with it, basically.
Yes, I do have one solution, potential solution, just to bounce off some ideas. So, missile block with pikes. You see, unlike a Roman testudo, which is made to block everything, raising a shield should not be as effective as a full-blown testudo. I think you can see where I'm going with this. If it becomes 100%, and in higher tiers it does become 100% and 70% at tier 10, and because missile block works as a flat percentage and keeps on increasing, that just, you know, a flat increase versus percentage increase will inherently be unbalanced. Why don't we just reduce that? Why does raising shield block you 100%? If it doesn't block it, then you can have ranged units will whittle the enemy down, just like they did at 1066 in England. What was that? The Battle of
Hastings.
Hastings. Yes, thank you very much. At the Battle of Hastings, they raise their shields. They get hit from the ground. They lower their shields. They get hit from the head. So it should never be 100% in case of raised shields, in my opinion, and that would fix the problem. It would take a long time to whittle them down, but they will get whittled down.
Yeah, but well, the time is also a factor and a huge issue of how long it actually takes to deal with a pike player that way. But I guess at least that's a safe approach, right? Again, not always, because the pike player may just have his own ranged player supporting him and firing at your ranged units, so they cannot just stand there and shoot pikes. Yep, so
that's what I was about to say. It's not a perfect world. You're not 2v1ing him at all times, right?
Yeah,
yes,
that's why we are bringing up that 2v1 point, which so many people are just always forgetting when you get into arguments about balance, right? We say, oh, elephants are overpowered. It's like, no, elephants are not overpowered because you can always 5v1 them. Excuse me, what? Or you just take pike unit, a Germanicus unit, and you take a javelin unit, and then maybe you add your heavy artillery, and then elephants are dead. Therefore, elephants are not overpowered. Are you listening to yourself? It's a 10v10 game. Hello. So if 4 players or 5 players are occupied with an elephant, the other part of the battlefield is 9v5, 9v6. So many people keep forgetting about that in their arguments, and it just immediately makes their argument invalid because you're not taking the whole picture into account.
You're absolutely right.
Therefore, nothing is overpowered because everything can be just 10v1 and dealt with.
Exactly. So adding a non-100 missile block to pikemen will solve this problem because in this case the range will still be able to counter it, but pikes will do their job of holding the line. After all, they're not supposed to push the enemies away; they're supposed to hold that line. So they still manage to do it. You still fight in the shade, so to speak. But even in the movie 300, they got whittled down.
No, they didn't. They had 100% missile block. Unless,
when they did that
apart from that very last scene. Apart from that, they had 100% missile block. And I made a few memes about it. So. Anyway, about the 100% missile block chance thing. I don't know if that's a really good solution about just lowering that, because if you have 90%, you're still blocking fucking 90% of missiles, and the percent is not good enough to whittle them down. But it's all about enabling that tactic or forcing them into missile block if either fight in the shade or raise shields position, so that you can attack it, because they therefore don't have available the pike phalanx, right? So maybe just lower the base missile block. So instead of being like 60, 70, 80, whatever it is on whichever tier, right, you lower it to 30, 40, right? And then you have to be in that position if you want to deal with ranged units. But anyway, the other solution that I would rather see is just lowering the angles, because the Studio having 270 degree protection or even more makes sense, right? They're literally, the only weak spot is their very ass. But in case of raised shields, it shouldn't be like that. But I've recently watched my old videos where I was playing slingers or ranged or the ranged units. But I vividly remember one slinger battle where I got behind a pike unit and I shot it from the side. It wasn't like completely straight from the back, but well, I was behind them, right? And they were facing forward toward my team. And they still blocked 98% of my missiles. So they also have like maybe not 270 degree, but definitely more than 180. So they don't only defend from all the missiles coming directly in front of them, but they also have some defense from the back to the sides, right? If you shoot them directly from the back, sure, they'll take all the hits, but that's very often very difficult to do, especially with pikes, who like to just sit in.
I mean, if they're back facing you, you could just charge them with infantry, right? Like.
Well, it depends whether you're ranged unit or melee unit, right? It's, chaos of the battlefield, so let's not delve into that too deep. But yeah, I was behind them, technically, shooting them from the side, like from 190 to 200 degree, and they still blocked everything, pretty much, apart from few lucky stones that got through. So yeah, I'll just lower the degree from which raised shields can block, and that would also serve to maybe not fix the problem but make it less annoying. And obviously there are many solutions to many issues, and you combine all of them and then maybe pikes are fixed overall. And let's also remember that before Arena went offline, after the wargaming period, right, they started working on a pike rework, and they added pike fatigue. So even though if you got that pike phalanx down and started mowing the units down, if the units that were attacking the pikes fought for long enough, the pike would get fatigue, and then you could break through that fatigue. But even that fatigue thing didn't really solve the problem. There was like one counter where you go with Sula and you go into Fortify, and then your melee defense is so high that the pike phalanx cannot get hits, even if it's not exhausted. So yeah, it is about numbers in that case, but overall the mechanic, well, it was improved, but it wasn't fixed. But now that we got to China, they just removed that rework and came back to how it was before the reworking started. But yeah, I think they did it because the purpose of those two tests, the Pioneer tests, were to test the new game mode and not Pikes. And the Pike rework was very much experimental, so they wanted something more familiar, more stable in terms of balance, to just test the new game mode, right? And the results of the tests being skewered by Pikes being, well, they're still OP, so that also skewers the results, but whatever. In the direction they didn't really know that well, right? Because Pikes were broken for so long. They still are. So at least that's the environment they know. They've got a lot of numbers that they can compare from the old mode and the new mode, with the Pikes being the same. So anybody wants to add anything about Pikes? Folks, you've been sitting very quiet throughout the entire podcast. Are you shy?
No, man. Well, to be honest, I can't really say much about like the Pikes in general for like.
Haven't you dealt with them as a Fox player, or just avoid them because they're too scary?
Not just like the usual stuff I do with them, like try to bait out their phalanx and then engage them. Doesn't really change all that much, to be honest.
Well, if
like,
you were to go alone, then they can just turn around. And even if you try to surround them 3v1, the thing is that even if you just go 3v1, free Folks units or free any melee units, which Folks are really good because they're fast, even 3v1, there's a very high chance that Pikes are going to win. Just 1v3 engagement, even if they're surrounded, they're just gonna spin to win. They're not gonna rout, and they're just gonna kill you, even if they're surrounded and outnumbered.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the very fundamental issue with Pikes. Okay.
Yeah, it all depends on like the team composition as well, though. Like if the enemy Pike player is out of position, it doesn't really matter that much that he can like spin to win, basically.
I mean, the problem is that they can pretty much always spin to win. They would be, you need to be really, really, really out of position to not be able to do that.
Yeah, or like bait out their fucking their phalanx mode. Like if they go out of phalanx, they have like 6 or 7 seconds cooldown on the skill, and in those 6 to 7 seconds, I can charge them and route them, and then it's like useless.
Well, unless he's Leonidas and he gets unlimited morale.
Yeah.
And if he's Leonidas, he just should bash by phalanx anyway.
Yeah, after 6 seconds, yes.
Yeah.
But like Pike players, or like Pikes in general, are not really a priority target for Foxes. So, I mean, sure, if I see them and I see, I have teammates around and we can deal with them quickly, then let's do it. But like a Pike player alone is not going to win the match. Usually.
Debatable, especially given how much map control they have, and especially now with the new game mode. You can,
that's why I'm
you can
saying,
single-handedly
like,
win an entire flank and therefore secure 2 cap points, which is a huge advantage.
That's why I said like I can't really say much about it because I haven't played like that many matches on the Chinese version. So I'm not sure. I have to play more matches to actually like have a definite answer.
I actually noticed that in the show match. Like one team, I think, had 1 or 2 Pike players on it, and you know, I'm not playing. I did play. I think I played Romans throughout the thing. Yeah, I played Romans, so I was a bit slower than Barbarians, right? So if I try and run past the guy, he'll probably rapid advance into me, right? So I can't just ignore the dude. And if I go into him, I'm just gonna die. So I basically have to sit there and slowly backpedal away from this guy if he wants to come at me, and hope that my range units can defeat his range unit. Like my entire like let's say I had 10 options to do right before. I now have 1 option. It's pray to God my range beats their range so that I have something to deal with these guys afterwards. Because, and you know, that's of course not counting Cav, that's not counting other players, that's not counting any of that, right? I'm just like, I went from being like, oh, the world is my oyster, to all right, well, I got to do this one thing and just cross my fingers, hope my teammate can pull this off.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
even if that range duel that you were talking about goes evenly, more or less, then, well,
I'm left in a 1v1.
your ranged unit is, your ranged player is almost dead himself, so not gonna help much.
Right?
Yeah, he will be just too insignificant for the Pikes to care about, so yeah, it goes back to 1v1 anyway. Okay, let's move on to the next balance issue. This one is a meme, and therefore my favorite. Heavy artillery. What do you guys think before I start my piece?
Ban
Delete that.
heavy artillery completely. Remove
Yes.
it. The moment
Yes.
every second it is spent within the game is an affront to humanity.
Yes.
I do more or less
agree.
agree with that. Astolfo?
I do agree with it. I mean, I agree with it for different reasons, right? Like, there you can argue why it's overpowered and everything. But to me, it's one of those units where someone has to do almost nothing to have a huge impact. You know, we just talked about how it's like you have to do so much as a ranged unit to stay away from cavalry, to kill other priority targets. To do that as a melee unit, you have to do that too. You know, you got to know what to engage, when to engage. Do I have the cooldowns to engage? Am I in the right position to engage? Am I going to take a debuff from that forest? Am I not? Am I in mud? Am I, you know, all these things. And then you have a guy sitting in the back of the map just top fragging by going hor 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 as he launches rocks.
Or right click goes brrr.
And then, you know, on top of that, to make it worse, again, like this one, I think is where elephants need a buff in this very specific scenario, right? Why are onagers sniper rifles? Why are they hitting elephants at max range perfectly right on the forehead and dinking them for a fourth of their health?
You know why? Because right click.
Like,
We've gotten to the point in
onagers
artillery.
could barely hit walls back in the old days, right? Like, you know, those things would just fly off into the city sometimes and take out a random house instead of the wall it's aiming at. And then in total or arena, you have an onager snipe a freaking elephant right on the forehead from max range.
Yep, and that was right after the elephants got introduced, just 1 or 2 patches later, which also occurred very fast. They added, like, I don't remember the exact number, but they added a multiplier on damage. I think it was times 10, because the problem in air quotes, right? It was fine that way back then, at least. Because yeah, the rock had a preset damage, like let's say 400. 400 is still big enough to pretty much one-shot everybody, maybe apart from the healthiest, tankiest Roman heavy infantry, right? But apart from that, everybody who gets hit, well, maybe cavalry, right? Everybody else who gets hit by a rock dies instantly on the spot. There's no such thing as taking damage from artillery and then standing up and then being, I don't know, yellow or orange with your HP. You just fucking die if you get touched by that rock. And elephants, well, they're also taking only 400 damage, so they didn't really give a fuck. Because that damage in terms of other units was spread out on every model. So you hit 10 models, you hit 20 models, 30 models, and all of them die. All of them take that 400 damage. Elephants take 400 damage, they don't care. So they're like, well, okay, times 10.
I mean, I don't mind the damage, right? If the rock hits the elephant in the forehead, sure. But the fact that it's hitting the elephant in the forehead at max range is specific to elephants. But like, I do agree completely across the board on heavy
but the point is that elephants are supposed to be counter to heavy artillery. They are supposed to be able to break through the enemy formations and go straight after that camping artillery ass and force them out of position. Which I actually also watched a recent replay or video of mine where I do exactly that. I have 3 elephants. I think it was Thermopylae. Yeah, it was Thermopylae. I go straight through the middle, straight after artillery. I duel an enemy elephant, and because my elephants were premium, I paid to win the duel because I had a gore ability and the enemy had what? I think he had Stampede instead
he
of
had
that.
Tickle 'em ability.
Yeah, I had basically paid to win to win that duel. So I lost 1 elephant in that duel. 2 made it through with almost full HP. And I went after artillery. And artillery does what? Almost kill both of my elephants. Kills 1 actually, I think. and the other one barely made it, and then pushed the artillery away. But the artillery does what? IKEA set, pack it up, 10 seconds, runs away, no problem. Deploys somewhere else, kills my elephant, which it would, but it didn't because he was a stupid player. So I actually get to, well, he still ran away, but he didn't pick up his artillery because he was too late with that. But yeah, as elephants are supposed to be counter to artillery, they just slapped a 10%, 10 times multiplier, and it's like, well, not anymore. This time, heavy artillery counters elephants, even though it's supposed to be the other way.
Yeah, memes aside, the reason why artillery should be completely removed is design-wise, it is such a horrible idea. Like, that's why the whole thing is an insult to game designers. Here's why. Whenever you add an element, there are a few factors that you must consider, especially when it comes to balancing. So, I honestly don't even know where to begin. There are just so many. But let's start with my favorite. With artillery, if it is too powerful, or even just a little bit too powerful, it will completely warp the meta around itself. And if it is underpowered, it will have no reason to exist to begin with. So you see where we're going with this. One of the oldest...
I mean, just balance it perfectly, problem solved.
Yeah,
and it's not like 1% in either direction.
Just saying, on Steam, I think heavy artillery was balanced. It was really good. It was you had two playstyles with artillery on Steam. You had low risk, low reward, where you essentially just camp behind some sort of a cliff. But if you do that, you're very reliant on what the hell is happening all around you. As in, if your team pushes, if the enemy pushes, and where it pushes, it's your flank or the opposite flank, and you have a limited range. So you essentially rely on the enemy team walking into your range. Which, if you're in a team setup, you can obviously just say, hey, well, we have artillery, they don't, let's camp, right?
Yep.
And then it works.
Are you talking about the air rocks?
What?
Even in Steam days, it was all about artillery anyway. Because any advantage that it was going to... Yes, it was.
No, it wasn't.
It was. I can bring the entire RTK clan and how they won their tournaments simply through artillery. That was their strategy. Anyway. They turned it into a World War One.
Going back to my,
I was wondering.
Going back to my argument, the other play style is high risk, high reward, which is what I was playing, where I would not camp behind cliffs. I would literally just set up my artillery in the front lines, wait for my team obviously to go ahead of me, right, and then always be a threat, no matter where I am, no matter where the enemy is. I always have someone to shoot at. And very often, since I was in open positions in order to be in range of everything, I would very often get just sniped by enemy cav and die, but high risk, high reward. If I don't get sniped by cav, hey, I deal a lot of damage, right? I even managed to cap enemy base with artillery twice, and it was back on Steam where you couldn't just pack it up as an IKEA set. And while they introduced the IKEA set, they combined the two playstyles where you have low risk, high reward all the time, because you have the low risk of being able to come behind a cliff, but you don't have the low reward that comes with it because, well, you just pack it up and go somewhere where you can shoot them. Oh, there's an enemy cavalry approaching. Let me pack it up and run very fast back behind a cliff to a safe position. In Steam, you would have to abandon your artillery pieces and hope that the artillery pieces themselves don't get destroyed, because you also couldn't repair them. Which I think the repairability is actually a good introduction. That's one of the good things with the rework. But the ability to pick it up and go as fast as light infantry to whatever the hell you want with your artillery and then redeploy them there, that shit's broken. And that's the main issue with artillery. And I also made a huge table on Reddit detailing what other things are broken with artillery and how to fix each of them. And then you apply maybe half of those fixes and the artillery will be in a good place. But as we go into fundamentals as to why heavy artillery is broken, as you said, Arcleon, it warps the meta around itself. It's just a very, very good comparison to World of Warships and aircraft carriers, where if an aircraft carrier is present in a battle, it plays completely differently as if aircraft carrier isn't present. Same in arena. if artillery is present on the battlefield, your objective suddenly switches from kill enemy forces or cap the base into kill artillery first and then worry about everything else.
Can I interject there, Mishra?
Yeah, I mean, with the new game mode, it's slightly different, so heavy artillery is less relevant, but it's still OP in every other way. Go on, Foxy.
To be honest, I think the main
I also
problem with
would
heavy
like to-
artillery
Okay,
is...
let Foxy talk.
Give me just a second. It's just not fun to play. Like I know no person that could play heavy artillery for like 10 hours a day for 2 weeks. Like no one can do that shit. It's too boring. It's the same.
Excuse me, I was that guy back on Steam when it was arguably much more boring than it is right now. Because back then, if I ran out of targets, I had to push it very, very, very slowly in order to be able to shoot again. Well, in Wargaming version, you can just pack it up and go. But I don't play heavy artillery. I didn't play heavy artillery on Wargaming version. I still don't play it on purpose, just on principle, right? Because I refuse to play that broken shit, and I'll just go play my ranged units or cavalry or whatever.
Preach, folks.
It's just, to be honest, I think it's just not fun to play. Like, it's not engaging at all.
Yep.
All you do is like clicking every 10 seconds with your mouse on the fucking screen, and that's it.
And
Oh yeah,
one of the-
that's another thing, right? Because at least back on Steam, you have obviously, well, you always have either the manual aim, which is you press Alt or whatever. It was Alt back then. I think they changed it to like one of the hotkeys for abilities now. But essentially, you just manual aim, where you just, okay, I target this piece of ground and then I shoot there, right? And then you also have the auto aim, which is just right click on a unit. And back on Steam, manual aim was always the way to go, which is obviously harder to pull off, right? But it is, hey, if you're skilled and you know how to aim, you get rewarded for it. If you're not skilled, well, you have access to the right click aim, but it's going to be worse. In Wargaming version, the manual aim is absolute shit, while the right click as a sniper rifle, as Astolfo pointed out earlier, where you can snipe elephants, and no matter what kind of direction changes just do, you always hit them, because the right click predicts all the movements. And unless you changed your direction after the rock is fired, the rock is shot rather, then you get hit, because you can avoid it. And also it travels so fast, especially when it's a short distance, that it's very often just humanly impossible to dodge it. And while all the other person, the artillery player, has to do is just right click.
Yes.
So it's a huge reward for no skill at all. You just right click.
Yes. So we have elaborated and pretty much dismantled every design decision for artillery to exist, with the exception of one. Does it do?
Oh, I haven't even gotten started, dude. Have you seen my
Yes,
table
exactly.
on Reddit?
That's why I said there are just so many things. But let's talk about them. Like, from game design, you obviously do things for a reason. Does artillery do what it is advertised to do? So let's ask that question. Does it? What is artillery supposed to do? Artillery, at least on the tin, as developers always like to say, it is there, and yes, please hold your laughter, to prevent camping.
I mean, I knew it was coming, so I didn't laugh. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just can't hold my laugh,
that's
because
the
this
reasoning.
is just insulting everybody's intelligence.
Artillery causes camping, right, and fixes it.
Yeah,
Well, what fixes camping is the capture points. And I also, back in the day, suggested dojos. I think dojos would still be a cool addition.
Yep.
But well, now that we have the capture points, it is kind of like a dojo anyway. So yeah, we've got that.
It could be like minor capture points. I would still like to see them, but that's a whole different point. So
we talk about it on a different podcast, so we don't need to dive into it here.
Yes. Absolutely. So going back to artillery, right? In the artillery, does it do what it's supposed to? Does it stop camping? As we have seen from the very first arena tournament, it did not. It warped the entire meta around itself.
The very first arena tournament had artillery banned. Just saying.
The one on the wargaming one, where you guys, where
that was wargaming one. That was SUNTZU Invitational one. That was the first one, and heavy artillery was banned. But the other one, the other one, I was the guy who was playing heavy artillery in that game.
Yes, and I was the one trying to counter it.
No, wait. Yeah, we fought against each other. You and Legion of
Yes.
13 back then. No,
Mhm.
I was playing archers probably. Yeah, and Sin
Yeah,
was
you were
playing
archers.
artillery. Yeah,
Yes.
but-
so
yeah, because I fucking refused to play it. But yeah,
yeah,
I was the mind behind
absolutely.
the strategy, and we was like, okay, we're just
Yeah.
gonna camp here behind this cliff, and they will be
Mhm.
able to not do anything about it. And that's how it
Exactly, and you did that entire tournament, and there's nothing wrong with that. I told organizers, this is exactly what is going to happen, and your tournament is going to suck. That's exactly what happened, and
Yeah, I
it's
told them
not
the same, just
exactly
ban
at
heavy artillery.
Nostradamus level. Yeah.
I've told them,
In-
our entire plan before it was like, okay, if they're not gonna ban heavy artillery, we're going to bring heavy artillery and we're going to win.
Exactly.
And I still told the organizers, please ban heavy artillery, even though our main strategy is based around heavy artillery because we know this is like super reliable way to win, which it was. I still told them just ban it because they asked me to be on a committee, right, to provide feedback because they knew I was a huge tournament organizer and competitive player, so they asked for my help. I did provide that help, but they didn't listen. I was like, well,
Exactly.
okay, well, if you're not going to ban it, I have to bring it because otherwise the other guys will bring it and
Yeah.
we're fucked.
May
And
I
they did.
interject?
And I still want to
And
win.
they did.
Go on, Astolfo.
All right, so I can also I can also give you an example from a tournament. So in the I can't remember what the name of it was. I think it was the SUNTZU Invitational, but I was playing in that tournament, right? And we went to semifinals, right? And in the last match that decided the win or not, my team did not have any artillery, right? And the enemy team had light arty sitting inside of a testudo. So the testudo blocked all of our range trying to hit the light arty. And the light arty was shooting out of the testudo, even though it would pass through its own units and kill its own units doing that. It just no clipped through them and could kill units 5 feet in front of them. And, you know, that was one big reason why we ended up losing that game. But also, it was just so not fun to play against. I mean, it was one of those things where it was like, okay, range players take it out, right? Well, you can't because they're under a testudo thing. Okay, so melee players get in there, get her done, right? Well, melee players are also dealing with a melee screen. And then, you know, okay, Cav players do it. What do you think the enemy Cav's doing? Just standing around looking at the sun or something? Like, it's going to intercept your cavalry.
Start fighting with the infantry, and then they have to anti-studio and then shoot them, but that is kind of maybe too little too late. Because they'll still be standing inside the infantry anyway, so they're gonna soak up the damage. But about artillery, the heavy artillery.
Yes.
Well, what I wanted to touch upon about that very particular final that we fought against each other. It was on marathon. Both games were on marathon.
Yep.
And they went very differently because one side on marathon is clearly better than the other. And we were on the one side, okay, we were just gonna camp behind this cliff and they're gonna, you know, be powerless against us, and that's what happened. But on the other side, the one that has the watchtower near the swamp, right? That same strategy suddenly doesn't work because you don't have vision from that cliff. So we decided to camp in front of the watchtower, which is much more difficult. It is a much more vulnerable position, but we still did it and we still won it. But it was it was much more difficult, and the battle was actually very equal. And if you remember, what happened in the game, that's ridiculous. Heavy artillery was able to kite an elephant.
I remember. Yes, it kited an elephant because they put the entire artillery piece, mind you, at least 500 kilogram artillery piece in their pockets and ran.
Yep, it was literally elephant was chasing the artillery, and artillery, okay, unpack, shoot one rock, pack again, run away. Okay, I'm far enough. Unpack, shoot one rock, pack again.
Yes, I remember that. It was the most frustrating thing in existence, and one of the reasons why it should be banned. Like, we did not even think of it at the time.
I did. I mean, I knew that. I knew that this is going to be to happen. I was like, I mean, I was the leader of the team. I was calling the shots, and I told him, kind of fucking elephant, you're faster than it.
Yep.
I think another thing is with the respawn system, right? They, like, once you put down the onager, it should stay there, right? You shouldn't respawn with a new one so you can get a new position. You should have to take that position back to use your artillery again. I mean, even if
with
they
the respawn,
remove
no.
that.
I mean, that is one of the solutions that I actually provided. That when you start the battle, you start packed with artillery packed, right? Then you go wherever the hell you want, because that's also an issue. So maybe someone stole your deployment point, right? And if that happened on Steam, you're fucked, because you're either in a very bad spot where you cannot shoot anything from, or you need to spend 1, 2, 3 minutes on going to your position where you can finally start shooting. But 3 minutes in, the battle is already halfway through.
Yeah, but in the current state, you can do both. You can IKEA pack and you get it back when you respawn.
Yeah, which is what I wanted to say. So in the wargaming version, how I propose it, you just spawn with it packed, but once you deploy it, you cannot pack it back up. In here, same thing, but if you die, you don't have to go there and pick it up again. You just those old artillery pieces disappear, and you spawn with the new ones. You pick one of the spawning positions and just deploy from there. If they have to keep the artillery in the game.
Babysit you.
And
that is actually the perfect opportunity, because you always had that argument, or CA always had that argument, that, well, we cannot just delete an entire, artillery, not artillery, an entire tech tree, tech branch from the game, because people have spent a lot of time playing it. Maybe a lot of players, only play heavy artillery, and then we will take away the reason to play. First of all, many players stopped playing because heavy artillery exists. So the artillery kind of literally killed the community. Maybe it wasn't the only reason, right? But it was
also
a huge factor, I would dare say.
Yeah, they would try to give that as a flimsy-ass excuse. I'm sorry, my language, but this is really frustrating. Take a page from Wizards of the Coast. They ban cards that are over $500 because it simply is overplayed. And they do this every few months, and people are fine with it. They're talking about hundreds, if not thousands. They banned Ancestral Recall. Want to know how much Ancestral Recall goes for? 10,000 American dollars each.
Very cool, but I cannot relate to it.
So yes, the people, and did it help the meta because it was gone? Yes. More people played it? Yes. Sometimes you just have to make these sacrifices. You have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. And yes, you can remove a tech tree, just like you removed an entire game because you refuse to do any marketing for it.
Yeah, or refuse to remove artillery. But
yes,
there are two choices that CA has here. Either rework heavy artillery, which is, a lot of work, a lot of thinking to do, and a lot of patches and iterations you would need to go through, which is the harder way, but arguably it can lead to a better game. Or just do it the easy way and just remove it.
Remove it. Yep, absolutely remove it. And now would be the best time because, well, there isn't really
there is a
anything going on.
China and all that stuff. Also, if you just straight up remove it, right? Even if you piss off hardcore artillery players, you're going to piss off a very small percentage of the arena community.
All 2 of them.
Yeah, all 2 of them, let's say. And you're going to make more than half of the community happy to see it go.
Yes. Also, how do we put this? This is one of the topics, as to little branching off, one of the controversial topics in the forums, right? The people who played artillery, maybe because they aren't doing anything on the battlefield, spend most of their time on the forums. So you would have a vocal minority of people defending artillery, heavy artillery, to the death with these silly arguments that just pushed me and a lot of people away from the forums in general. They'll be like, oh, you're having problems with artillery? You are a noob. I play as cavalry. Which, when you look at his profile, he only plays heavy artillery. A cavalry can always defeat them with a single charge. Well, just play archers, play slingers. Yeah, your heavy artillery piece, which requires only one person to operate, can block all the shots.
Yeah, and heavy artillery, heavy artillery truly counters pretty much every single unit type in the game.
Yep.
Even elephants, ranged units, pikes, everything. Heavy artillery just triumphs everything. And the only saving grace it has right now, it is the new game mode, which takes away the significance that artillery has. but it still has a huge fucking significance. It still wrecks everything. That does
Did any
that
of
didn't
you
change.
guys? Did any of you guys ever play the Company of Heroes series? Artillery
Yes.
in that series would turn the tide of battle, but it had a huge cooldown, so you could still take back ground and win battles because the dude had a bunch of his stuff, all of his resources sank into artillery,
Yeah,
right?
but that's not the same thing because that's only one of the abilities probably, right? Instead of your entire army. And the guy cannot just sit there for 5 minutes and do nothing waiting for his artillery to reload. So
Well, I mean, it's
completely
a
different
team
thing.
game, right? That's why I was talking about it too, right? So let's say you have 3 people fighting 2 people, and one of the players went arty. Well, that one person could theoretically 1v3 because the arty just wiped out everything that was advancing. But he can't do that next team fight. Like, it's not just always up to just instantly win a team fight, is my point, right? It's it's something that has to be planned out to win a specific team fight that can turn the tide of the game.
Yeah, that was one of the sort of solutions that well, not sort of solution, that was sort of one of the solutions that I provided in my thread, which would be just give artillery like a strain ability, which gives them better range, right? But if it's on cooldown, you have lower range, so you need to be much closer to the fight, and therefore put yourself in a more vulnerable position. Or just wait until the ability is back up, and if you want to bombard enemy from a safe position.
Yeah, but then like people are just gonna like wait.
There is a huge thread, and we can literally just make an entire podcast just about heavy artillery, because trust us, dear viewers and listeners, we just barely scratch the surface when it comes to heavy artillery. So let's not dive too deep into it, and let's move on to another meme, which is the ranged meta meme. Does ranged meta actually exist?
I haven't noticed it that much in the Chinese version, to be honest. Like it wasn't that bad. In the wargaming version, it was way worse. Like, remember the fucking death laser, like Caesar and
yes.
Well,
you know what I'm
that's
talking
kind of
about.
a separate issue.
Yeah,
and they fixed it. Yeah, once it started popping up, Caesar, your ranged, your reload buff is gone. Now it's a range buff. There we go, fixed.
But like, it's not that bad in the Chinese version. At least so far, I haven't noticed it.
Well, the thing is with the Chinese version, is because of the new game mode, it is much harder for archers to find protection, and for cavalry, which is much stronger in that new game mode, it is also much easier to just pick up archers for free all the time. I just had one game, not one game, but I had one of the games that I've watched also recently from the Chinese version. I played Cavalry, and I think our team had 0 ranged units. But the case was, it was Salernum. We fought in the center, and the enemy had 2 or 3 ranged units in the center, obviously covered by infantry, right? They were protected. But all it took was gunslingers elephants and my cavalry. Elephants attacking from the front, my cavalry attacking from behind. And even if you suicide into archers, even if you trade your cavalry for archers, which I managed to kill the archers without losing my cavalry. But even if I did, it wouldn't be an issue, right? But that then forces archers, once they die, once they're even if they don't die, but they're forced to retreat and heal, that disconnects them from the protection of infantry 95% of the time. And then cavalry players, all they have to do is go somewhere between the enemy army and the respawns. And hey, 3 archer player to kill. Oh, another one. Oh, another one. Oh, artillery. Gotta pick all that up and just win the game single-handedly.
I think the range...
That's why range meta definitely doesn't exist anymore in this new game mode. But let's talk about it outside of the new game mode and how it would work, in a team environment, especially when you have full coordination and archer players are actually provided the protection they need. They don't get abandoned, and it's a tournament game, let's say, between 2 highly skilled teams. Does range meta exist then?
So I don't know if I would tag it as range meta, right? But there's no, I mean, Cav and and ranged units are the carry units, right? Very rarely does a melee unit swing the battle to, make
Unless it's
the game.
Pikes,
But
which we
here, let me
covered already.
finish. Let me finish.
Sure,
Yeah, Pikes. Yeah, okay. But so that I can see where some people can argue that range units are strong, right? But they're not taking the whole picture into account, right? Like, you have a job as an infantry, right? You're not supposed to be this unstoppable death machine that just slices through everything and 1v10s the game.
Not?
Not what?
Okay.
Yeah, every Germanicus player in existence just like, Nani?
Yeah,
Exactly. Me?
I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, dude. I'm a melee player, and I didn't play much. I refuse to play Germanicus
Yeah, me
because
too, man.
he
Fuck that guy.
is too meta, and
Yes.
I would basically win every 1v1 except against Pikes just because I pressed R and the win button. But anyway, that's a different subject, and so it does feel bad to be a melee and not have any control over that range units, right? And since I always played in a group, and all of us pretty much always played in a group, maybe you guys solo queued more than me, that takes a ton of the pain out of it.
Good luck going solo queue as archers.
That takes
Even in the
a
old
ton
game
of
mode.
the pain. Like, a ton of the pain out of it, right? Because you have someone to work with, you have someone to coordinate with. You don't feel so like, I'm getting deleted by these javelins because like I feel like this whole range meta thing might have came from solo queue players. Because as a solo queue, let's say infantry player, you can choose to follow your range.
He's faster. Oh, I taken 5% of my HP. No.
You can, well, I mean, depends on your class, right? If you're a barbarian, you're going to take more. But anyway, but you're faster, so you can run them down.
Story of my life, dude.
I mean, that's not.
But you're
necessarily
faster,
true.
so you can run them down. But anyway, like back to the point, right? As a solo queue player, it does feel worse to go against range units, and I think that's where the whole stereotype of the range meta came from. I mean, in the old version, when it was kill points and it was kind of campy, sure, it was stronger back then, and the game mode did a ton to fix that. And that's why, I don't think it exists anymore. And I don't think it really existed that much back then.
Yeah, I also think it didn't exist. Range meta didn't exist even on the old game mode.
Oh, it did for a while.
But at
only,
the same... Go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
Oh.
go ahead.
Right.
No, you.
But at the same time, as a solo queue player who's sitting there as infantry, I did occasionally solo queue, and if I saw javelins, I was like, I guess I just walk to the other side of the map because I'm about to get fucking obliterated by these javelins, and I don't have someone to work with because I know
Germanicus like, haha, this too though.
Yeah, well, I didn't play Germanicus, right? If you're if you didn't
that's what
play
I'm
the
saying.
one general that could, make that stuff go away and make your life perfect, right?
No, but then he gets
yeah,
hit by
yeah.
heavy artillery.
But I think since we always had a gaming group to play with, it does tone it down a ton. It's not a range man. It's not overpowered. But to a solo queue player who's hopping in, especially in the low tiers, and he doesn't know much, and or he's playing any general other than Germanicus, and he has really low armor because at the low tier, he's going to be like, I'm getting obliterated. I'm going to go rage on the forums now.
Yeah, that's also one of the things that emphasizes it, or rather feeds into the range meta myth or meme, is that ranged units are much stronger on low tiers, which is where majority of players reside and get their initial experience from, obviously, right? Well, not majority, all of them. So they get that preconception that, ranged units are wrecking me when I'm tier 4, therefore all ranged units are bad. And it also feeds, because that's just psychology. For example, in Conqueror's Blade that I am playing for a year now, people are always raging about range meta when it was never range meta. But because they're raging about it and crying about it on forums, boomer games just like Creative Assembly are just giving up under that pressure from the community about them just crying about the ranged meta. So they nerfed the bow hero in Conqueror's Blade to the point it's useless, and pretty much the same happened in Arena with Patch 3.1. Patch 3.1 was mainly aimed to address the frustration within the community with both ranged units and friendly fire. That's when they changed heavy artillery, their famous rework, as they said on the stream. This rework will change the way you look at artillery. And what they did? They made it shoot one rock. That was the only change they did. And well, rock deals more damage, but there's only one of it. Great rework, yeah, sure. I didn't even touch upon that when we were talking about heavy artillery, but it was a mistake, a huge mistake, but I'm not going to go into it. So yeah, that 3.1 patch was mainly addressed on reducing the frustration within the community. So they increased accuracy of ranged units. So when noobs were shooting enemy units from behind your own units, right? So you're a ranged unit, in front of you is your friendly Germanicus that fights the enemy Germanicus, and you just start shooting the enemy Germanicus, right? And because your accuracy was so low, you would very often hit the Germanicus, your own Germanicus in the back, and you deal a lot of damage, because back then the damage of ranged units was pretty high. Which is compensated by shit aim. But now in 3.1 they increased accuracy, so when you're shooting the enemy unit from behind, from behind your own unit, it doesn't hit your unit that often. But what they did all the rework around the accuracy, and because accuracy was buffed, they needed to compensate in other areas. So they compensated in missile block. They increased missile block so heavily on all units that barely anything gets through from the front, which is arguably a good thing, because that rewards ranged players for actually hitting the enemies from the sides and the back. So arguably a good thing. Also increases.
It depends on who they're playing, right? Like, if you're someone who doesn't have any form of raised shields at all, Carthage. Sorry, someone was in my throat. You're Carthage, right? Well, I can't sit there and testudo. I can't sit there and raise shields. I can't reduce the damage in any way from the front.
Yeah, but now pretty much all the units, even the light units, they get very, very high missile block from the front. And
I'm saying that
it's all about closing distance, right? So
I think the change is good.
You use a melee unit, you enter the range of a ranged unit, you start being shot, but you're blocking 80% of the shots, and the shots that make it through deal very little damage, because they nerfed the damage as well, and that kind of broke, because the formula for damage is somehow so fucked up that, for example, when I was playing tier 6 slingers, I remember they had a sling that gave you 5 more damage, just 5 more damage, regular damage, not AP damage, and it compensated for 5 range. So it traded 5 less range for 5 more normal damage. And suddenly, when you had that better sling, and the one with more damage, your damage increased by 4 times. Like, I was shooting, no matter what I was shooting, only AP damage goes through. I suddenly increase my normal damage by 5, and suddenly I deal like 40, 60 damage per shot. What the hell happened? I just added 5 damage. Why is my damage now 5-6 times bigger? What the hell?
It is also multiplied by the amount of models you have and the amount of times they shoot.
No, it isn't.
No, it does. Every shot.
They played with the numbers so much. Like, when I actually think about that 3.1 patch, I love to meme about the 3.1. But when you actually think about the changes they did to ranged, a lot of them are good changes that also reward better players, while also reducing the impact that bad players have. So, for example, when it was the standard thing that you shoot an enemy unit that is fighting your unit and you're shooting your own unit in the back, if you were to do that before the patch, you would just deal more friendly fire than you're actually dealing damage to the enemy. But after the patch, it was the other way around. So you could be that noob that just shoots enemy units from the front while hitting your own units in the back. But now you're not being punished for it, because you still contributed ever so slightly positively to the game, to your team, rather than negatively by dealing more damage to your own unit than to the enemy. So in that case, it is kind of bad, because it doesn't punishing a noob for doing a noob thing. But if it serves to reduce the toxicity within the community and frustration that the melee player faces, because it's not his fault, like he engaged infantry, he did his job, and he's getting punished because he has a noob on his team that friendly fires him, right? That's annoying, people get pissed off about it, and rightfully so. So CA did something to counterbalance that. They essentially dumped the game down somehow to reduce the impact that noobs have on it. But at the same time, they made a genius move and they made, also more rewards for better players that can now somewhat abuse the laser accuracy that there is. But at the same time, they've completely fucked up the damage that the ranged units deal, and the missile block sometimes is just too much from the front. And you've got ridiculous situations where you shoot barbarian units in the back. They're supposed to be lightly armored. You're supposed to be rewarded for hitting them in the back. And yes, you get rewarded because they don't block your missiles anymore, so you deal more damage. But they still deal only AP damage to fucking barbarians while you're hitting them in the back. Hello? The least armored unit in the battlefield, you're hitting them in the back and you're still doing AP damage. Something's wrong.
No.
Yeah, obviously, says the Fox player. So, yeah, they need to just revise the numbers in there. Like, a lot of these changes are really good on principle. So, kind of the opposite of the heavy artillery work they did, where a lot of the changes they made were absolutely shit in terms of principles.
Yeah.
So ranged unit rework in patch 3.1, overall good. They just need to tweak the numbers. They just need to find the right numbers. What I would do is increase damage at the cost of accuracy. Don't make the accuracy as bad as it was, because you will go back to what it was, and it also wasn't good because of the frustration it was causing. But slightly decrease accuracy and increase damage to compensate for the smaller accuracy. But then that should fix, the problems with inconsistent damage, where you shoot enemy in the back and they don't take any additional damage.
I mean, I think if you shoot them in the back,
you
decimate them. But if you shoot them in the front and they have a shield in their hand, it should reduce it.
The problem is that I think they block a little bit too much. So the thing with the ranged meta, right? And when I talked and I asked you about the tournament setting, right? Two organized, coordinated, and skilled teams fighting each other. What happens in that scenario, if you go for the ranged meta build, which is, essentially you play the protect the ranged player and let him carry, all the enemy team has to do is close the distance, start fighting your melee units, and if they didn't take range, they have 3 more units. Let's say the range team has only 1 range player, 3 units, and tries to protect it, while the enemy team has 0 range units, and therefore have 3 more melee units. And those 3 melee units, even regardless of whether or not they can make through and punch through the enemy formation or surround it somehow, put enough pressure so that the ranged units have to retreat or get caught off guard and get just decimated charged, which very often happens. But even if they don't manage that, they close distance so fast that the ranged units don't have enough time to deal enough damage before they got reduced to being useless. Because still, shooting an enemy unit when it is facing your direction and you're shooting and it is being blocked by your own unit, it's not doing that much damage at all, which is, I guess, a good thing. But just because the damage is so low, the archer player has very little situations in which he can deal significant damage that would be able to lift his own weight, because you just sacrificed having 3 melee units for having 3 ranged units. So in order for the 3 ranged units to be worth it, they would need to deal an equivalent of 3 HP, 3 full units of infantry, right, to make it worth. And very often that is just not possible. And then you add a unit like elephants that can just punch through all the protection that the archer player has and force the archers out, because they obviously can force the elephant. And very often they won't have anywhere to run because everything is engaged, so it cannot disengage anymore, they cannot kite. And the range meta is just dismantled so easily, just by having elephants, for example, or just having 3 more melee units. So yeah, it's for me range meta never existed, and you have some exceptions, like Cretan archers. They had really big damage, but that just comes down to the numbers not being right. You have some ranged units that deal a crap ton of damage, and you have some ranged units that deal close to no damage. So they should just look into the numbers, the damage numbers, and balance them out to make it more consistent across all tiers, and it should be fine. Just make archers viable by making them deal a little bit more damage on certain tiers, a little less damage on other tiers, so that they can lift their own weight in situations such as these that I've described. And then it just comes down to stylistic choice, whether or not you prefer the rush tactic or you prefer the protect the range player tactic. Both are viable, both are equally valuable, and then it comes down to skill.
Yep.
And right now it comes down to unit selection, sadly. Okay, anybody wants to chime in on my monologue?
One last thing before we move to the next point is what I would suggest, in case somebody from CA is listening, please take the stuff on the forums with a grain of salt, and by that I mean lethal doses of salt. The people there are not on the same skill level as the people who compete, and those who are casual players, you cannot balance the game around those players. And like any successful esports game so far has always balanced it around the top, the cream of the crop players. When Magic the Gathering, and I know I keep using it because it's been around for 25 years, which is an eternity in game years, they must have been doing something right. They only balance around tournaments, the people who make a living out of playing this game. And what they do, they look at the meta statistically. They don't look at the forums. If you look at the forums, you see the dumbest things in existence.
I mean, you need to be careful about looking at the game only through statistics.
Oh, not just through statistics. No, through players, through experienced players. You know, with the whole Praetorian system, that's one of the reasons why
I was a Praetorian since the very beginning, pretty much.
Yeah. They need to listen to those Praetorians, look at the statistics, and just those forums. That can at least give you an idea as what people think. But if you start balancing the game around the forums, you're going to have what Pokemon could have become, aka a very, very bad game. You know how everybody is like, oh, I want to have only Gen 1, but with the entire world open, I want to have the dumbest Pokemons and things like that.
Yeah, about listening to Praetorians, just saying, but the heavy artillery rework, as it is right now in the game, was suggested by a Praetorian.
Yes.
I was heavily against that suggestion, but they decided to listen to the older Praetorian, and well, now
Praetorian that has, that's why you cannot, even among Praetorians, you cannot have them be all equal. Like who is that Praetorian? Nobody knows. Some random guy who picked up a Total War once in 10 years.
No, he was actually one of the most influential Praetorians back then.
Well, apparently he's not. He shouldn't have been.
Apparently no. But yeah, it's just about careful listening to feedback. It's to say,
and also,
take everything with a great pinch of salt, whether it comes from a Praetorian or it is written on a forum. Just judge everything based on its own merits. Don't even look at who posted it. Just take everything into consideration as it is written and not by whom it is written. By whom? I don't know. English is hard, right?
Yes. That's true, but you need to get your feedback from somewhere, and you need to prioritize that feedback.
Yeah,
so
you're taking feedback, but just you have to be smart about listening to that feedback.
Yes,
but that's also the problem, right? Because the devs very often don't play the games themselves, and they look at statistics, they look at feedback, they lack their own experience in their own game to verify that feedback.
So that's why we are here. That's why large companies employ play testing. They have a QA experts who all they do is to play the game, not to find bugs, but to test the game at the highest possible level. The head of design in Wizards of the Coast, Magic Division, is Melissa DeTora, an ex-professional Magic player. That's exactly how you do it. You promote people based on their merit. You know these people are legit because they play the game, they have paid their dues, so to speak, and those are the people you should listen to. You should not be listening to people with who have clear personal biases, people who have clear agendas, or those who just like to post instead of play.
Yeah, but then people will say, "Oh, Mistru plays ranged units. Obviously, he'll advertise buffing ranged units, and he'll say that range meta doesn't exist." But deep down, he knows that range meta exists.
I mean, even as a
he wants to make it even stronger. Hello, I am a heavy artillery player back on Steam. They buffed the ever-loving shit out of artillery, and I stopped playing artillery based on that. Just saying.
As a melee player, I don't think there is a ranged meta, right? I think there is, I think you got to look at it from multiple angles, right? Like if you get like 3 Praetorians or whoever you want, right, that play 3 different classes and you kind of like get everyone's input, I would say that's probably the ideal way to do it.
Yeah, and if all of them tell you that range meta doesn't exist, it probably doesn't exist. But then, but there's 3 Praetorians here, and there's 50 people on forums crying about ranged meta. Ranged meta must be true in the end.
Just statistically, that's what they think. But their statistic, it's the same problem with democracy. A professor's vote should not be equal to a shepherd's vote,
Okay, maybe let's not dive into that. But anyway,
yes, but
that is a little bit of a problem because, I mean, it depends on how to look at it, because they want the game to have a huge audience, right? So maybe you do changes. Yeah. You do changes like patch 3.1, which maybe from a competitive perspective is bad, but it is good from the perspective of the overall population. Because as I said, it was aimed mostly at reducing frustration of the players. If players are frustrated when playing your game, and you, for example, get frustrated when playing against heavy artillery, well, then people will start leaving the game. And even if the competitive players say, "Oh, this game is so well balanced," but if it doesn't have the casual players to live off of, then the game dies anyway. So there's a very delicate balance. And as you mentioned, right, Mongoose made the same argument back on our first podcast, that all the successful esports games do balance it around the highest level of play. But I don't know the escape that well. But for example, League of Legends, right? They definitely balance it around the highest level of play, and rightfully so. But also what they have is that most of the players play ranked, right? And if it's normal, if you feed in normal, if you take some dump shit or whatever, nobody cares because it's a normal. People care about ranked, but in ranked, you always play with people around your skill level. Well, almost always, right? Elo exists.
You still have an MMR.
In Arena, the main queue or the only queue is unranked. So the skill level of players is all over the place. Sometimes one team is clearly better than the other, or there's just a huge disparity between team members. We can have a very strong right flank where all the good players went and very weak left flank, while the enemy team did the same, and the good flanks just kill the weaker flanks and they end up fighting each other. So should you balance Arena for the highest game level, even if there is no ranked queue? And even if there is, it would exist alongside the non-ranked queue, and the non-ranked queue would still be the main. I still think yes, you should balance around the highest level of play, because if you don't do that, then you have broken units that good players can abuse. For example, I think that the heavy artillery work, as we've seen between Steam and Wargaming, it was aimed at the noob players, right? Because a good player would know how to play around. As I said, there was the low risk, low reward playstyle, and it was high risk, high reward. And then the noobs would play the low risk, low reward because they couldn't play high reward. Because if they face a high risk and they don't know how to deal with it, they would just die all the time. So they went for low risk, low reward. But then, heavy artillery sucks. There's nothing for me to do. I'm just camping here behind a cliff. Nothing in my range. Boring. I can move forward. So CA is like, okay, we've got you. A very good newbie. We're gonna give you IKEA set and you'll be able to pack your artillery and deploy it anywhere you want. Right? And then a noob player who will not understand what kind of opportunities it gives to him, he'll just use it as developers kind of intended, right? He's camping behind a cliff. Okay, go pick up your artillery, deploy somewhere where you will be able to shoot, and have fun. It works for noob players, but then you have a good artillery player who understands what kind of advantage that tool gives him, and you have a situation like in the tournament where a heavy artillery kited an elephant. So you have the good players take that, noob friendly aimed change and take it to a ridiculous level, and they can not only use it in tournaments, they can use it in regular solo battles. Not solo battles, but regular queue, and just wreck everybody in there by abusing the mobility of heavy artillery or any other change that was aimed at noob players that make good players ridiculously strong.
You mentioned a ranked mode, and personally, I like as much as it is cool. I think they need a bigger player base to do it, because then it splits it between norms and ranked. B, like, I really don't want to play a game where I'm facing the same teams over and over again because that's the best stuff. Like, I mean, every game that introduces some form of ranked becomes this monotonous meta slave. And if I want to maintain my status as a competitive player, then I can only play, for example, as a melee. Probably it would end up being Germanicus or Hashtable. And I think that's another way you can buff ranged units, right? Like lowering your missile block across the board, probably don't do that. But, lower things like, why does Testudo have to block 100%? Why does range shields with the additional missile block you have innately become 100%? Why does those things, like, for example, someone like Hannibal, who has to use his forced march, he takes 20% more range damage, and he doesn't have a range shield or raised shield, right? But then you have Germanicus, who's going to outslap him regardless because he has vengeance, and then he also gets the best range defense in the game too on top of that, right?
And also the best charge.
And the best charge, right? And so it's one of those things where, like, you can buff ranged by tweaking other classes, right? Like, if cavalry's not so strong, like, you could reduce cavalry's strength, you could make archers better, you can tweak different melee units so that they're not so oppressive. They're not just going to sit there and be like, rain down on me, and it does nothing but tickle me.
I mean, I would actually argue the opposite. So you said that don't lower the missile block across the board. I would actually do that, because then that gives a higher significance to abilities like Testudo, like raised shields. All right, and then you have a clear distinction between units that have that ability and those that don't have, right? And then as an archer player, okay, this is Germanicus. If I start shooting him, he'll just go into Testudo. Oh, but this is a Sula player, so I can shoot him and still deal good damage. But with everyone having a very high missile block chance,
I'm just gonna play
it doesn't
Germanicus.
matter. It's either hitting 0% or just 20%, which isn't much anyway.
Yeah,
and maybe you'll just play Germanicus, but then you can argue, well, you just play Germanicus because it's not only it has the Testudo, that counter ranged meta that doesn't exist.
Or I'll play Hashtable and just heal myself all the damage you just did, which is ridiculous. Yeah. They need to take that out. Like, my God.
Yeah, but then that goes into, Germanicus is much better than every other melee commander, right? Which is kind of beyond the point of balancing archers. Well, it still affects them, but very, very indirectly, and not that much. Anyway, let's move on to the next topic, as we mentioned, Cavalry. I think Cavalry has changed the most with the introduction of the new game mode, because it's so much more about mobility and so much more about picking up the archers that are left without protection after respawning or having go to back to heal. And they are able to sneak caps, contest caps if they're under attack and nobody else is around. So Cavalry gets so much more utility compared to before the new game mode, that it has also become one of the most OP units. It doesn't have, that ridiculous thing as elephants, pikes, or heavy artillery, where you need multiple units coordinating really well to just take it down. No, you just need a melee unit, and Cavalry will just need to fuck off, right? But with also the introduction of the XP, cavalry ability to pick their fights also becomes much more valuable. So even though they don't have that ridiculous ability like elephants, pikes, and heavy artillery, just the insane increase in their utility and what they can do also heavily weights onto their balance. And how would you guys fix that? Where it's not just, you can just nerf cavalry in terms of really their stats, because the stats are okay. They don't outperform any other unit really, to a ridiculous extent. So how do you make a solution to that problem of cavalry being way too strong at the moment?
That one's a hard one to tackle because, cavalry is the counter to range, right? Like, I mean, I guess other range counters range too, to an extent. But, if it can't do its job, then there's no place for it. But at the same time, right now, it's just so good at everything. Like, you can win a melee fight. You can take out the enemy artillery. You can take out the enemy ranged. You can take out the other cavalry because your cavalry commander is stronger than theirs is, or that tier is stronger than theirs is. I think the versatility of cavalry is just like, that's kind of what makes it hard to balance because it's so versatile, right? And as it levels up, it's gonna. I think, does cavalry get more armor as it levels up? That means range can't shoot at cavalry.
Everybody gets more armor as they level up. Leveling up gives you armor and damage.
Yeah. So when
I think in case of melee infantry, it also gives you melee attack.
Yeah. So if a ranged unit starts shooting cavalry, well, that cavalry is going to have higher armor. Let's say worst case scenario with the Roman one, right? They already have shields. They already have higher armor. They already, they get that veterancy to where, like, as an archer, even with melee support to keep the guy off of you, he's not even worth shooting anymore because you're not going to damage him. And, I think just the versatility Cav brings is kind of what makes it feel oppressive. And in the old game mode, when you threw away Cav and you lost it, that was a huge penalty, right? And now that Cav can come back, and I truly like the new game mode better. I warmed up to it. I warmed up to the respawning thing, but the versatility of cavalry is what makes it such a dominating presence on the field, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's obviously the case. But if you take away, that mobility, that versatility, you take away their identity, and cavalry suddenly is no longer cavalry. Yeah. So how do you fix that? I mean, one of the fixes, which I'm very surprised isn't the case, because it used to be the case in wargaming, is that when it comes to capping points, now what counts is the amount of units, not soldiers, on top of that point. So you can literally have 3 units of cavalry, 1 soldier each, and you will cap it as fast as 3 full units of infantry.
Yes, his internet cut out. It'll come back in a few seconds, I believe.
Yeah, I guess my internet likes to stop working randomly. Am I back?
Yes, sir.
Hooray. So as I was saying
that... Yeah, you were back.
Yeah, so 3 units of cavalry, 1 soldier each, will cap a capture point, as quickly as 3 full units of infantry. Which, in the previous version, Wargaming and Steam, it was balanced well. Obviously, cavalry has a much easier time going all the way around and starting capping the base. So in order to prevent ninja caps, they just, we base them on the amount of soldiers. Cavalry has only 40 soldiers to start with, right? So it's only 120 soldiers if an entire cavalry player goes onto the point. So it caps almost 3 times slower as if it was an infantry player that has, much harder time of getting to the point. So if an infantry player that has a harder time getting onto a ninja cap situation, he gets rewarded more for it because he did the harder thing, right? So he caps faster. Cavalry caps slower. So just doing that, just changing the cap mechanic itself to be based on amount of soldiers again, instead of amount of units on top of it, that would come, that would help definitely with the cavalry dominance in the game mode. By just sniping capture points very quickly. And if you snipe a capture point, that has huge repercussions towards it. It's just a domino effect or butterfly effect, where you suddenly give your team forward a spawn point, you take away a spawn point and healing point from the enemy team, and that transfers into control over an entire new area, and then you can use it to just snowball the game through a single ninja cap of a capture point with 3 units of cavalry. Even at the very beginning of the game, it can completely snowball the game out of control. So giving the enemy team more time to react by slowing the capture speed of cavalry or any unit that is nearly depleted, right? That would come a long way. But do we need to think about how to do it? Maybe some kind of exponential scaling, or rather logarithmic, I think it would be the case. I'm bad at math, excuse me for that. But essentially, if you're, for example, an infantry player, you fought heavily, right? You fought in the middle between A and B point, and you won the fight, but barely. So you have like 20 soldiers alive in each unit, right? You fought your hardest, and you deserve to capture the enemy point because you've beaten them in a 1v1 fight, let's say, and you've pushed them back, so you deserve to capture the point. But if you're only 20 soldiers in each unit, because that's all you have left alive, you cap very, very slowly suddenly. So maybe not make it a linear progression of capping speed, but logarithmic, right? Which increases very quickly at the beginning and then increases slower and slower. So it's the reverse of exponential growth, if I remember my math lessons correctly.
You could also make it based on class type, right? Like
Or
a
on a class
range
type,
unit's not gonna get, a range unit's not going to get out of anything scot-free. Let's say he's fighting an equally skilled range player. I mean, either a melee or a range player, right? In either of these scenarios, let's say they win against an equally skilled player, basically. They outplay him, or he makes a mistake or something, and you only have a few units left, right? Either the melee or range player who deserves that point, they fought for it. They can't take it because it's super slow. But I don't know. It's really hard to do it. Like you said, a nerf to one class can affect another class in weird ways. I think the way you
in terms of capping of just capping speed, it wouldn't have that effect really.
Well, it depends on how deep you are in their territory. If you're closer to their base, closer to the respawn.
Yeah, I really like your suggestion about, because one solution to that problem that would be introduced with the linear progression of capping speed is either logarithmic progression or just capping speed based on class. So it still is about how many units you have, right? But 3 cavalry units at the moment cap as fast as 3 infantry units. It doesn't matter if there are 1 soldier or 100 soldiers in that unit, the capping speed is the same. So you could keep that mechanic if you really think that's a good idea, but apply a multiplier based on the class. So if it is a cavalry unit, let's have like 0.5 multiplier on the capping speed. If it is a ranged unit, you can argue maybe ranged units should cap slower than infantry, maybe they should cap faster, because ranged unit cannot contest the points. As soon as someone gets close to them, they need to run away because they cannot hold the point. So maybe make your ranged units capture faster. You can base it on the difficulty of a unit type of getting on top of the point. Or
I think range
you can also range can cap as fast as infantry, but you can also base it on what kind of rolls do you want to
faster. I don't mind if they cap faster. I just don't think they should be a slower. One of the I don't think Cav should outcap a range unit or something like that.
Yeah, but so you can either base it on difficulty, you can base it on just the amount of soldiers with the multiplier, or on the roles that you want. So for example, you say, the range units are the carries, the cavalry provides utility, but what infantry provides, it provides territory control, which is what a lot of new players are just not aware of. That how important taking control of key positions is. And it always was important, right? Like, capturing that cliff, capturing that forest, capturing that long grass, then your range units can use to shoot the enemy range units, while the enemy range units cannot retreat that fire efficiently, right? So terrain and controlling the terrain was always very important, but now it's even more important because of the capture points that give you very direct benefit towards winning the game itself, because it's all about the points, or capping the base in that case, which is also territory control. So we can emphasize it even harder by making infantry the best cappers, which they would automatically be if you just base it on numbers. But yeah, it's all the different ways you can balance that, just the capping speed. So let's say capping speed should be changed. As it is right now, it is bad, and you have all those different variants of difficulty, role that you want the units to fulfill, just based on soldiers, or based on logarithmic progression based on soldiers. You have all those solutions, just pick one of them and change it, make it better. But what about cavalry picking off ranged units for free between respawns, or just going back to heal? There's a huge issue, and how do you address that? How do you maybe incentivize the melee players to defend archers? I mean, the best incentive is just winning the game, right? If you win the game, you get a lot of rewards, but a lot of melee players, or just noob players, will not see the correlation between, if I defended this ranged player from being picked up for free by the enemy cavalry, that increases my chances to win, and if I win, I get more rewards, which is good for me. They will very often see, ranged player, fucking noob, let him die. I'm gonna go forward and gonna press my vengeance. Right? That's what they very often think. So you need to, try to educate players. Well, either educate them, which is very often just impossible because they will not care. Or how they will care, maybe overemphasize that importance of protecting and fighting as a team by providing some very direct and very obvious and visible rewards for fighting as a team, which you already have, but they're not very visible. Just saying.
Yeah, maybe like explicit incentives to teach people to behave in a certain way. Some games do like to do that in very subtle, very smart ways. They could implement that. It's going to be it's a difficult choice.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of the thing that balancing the game for noobs or versus balancing the game for good players. But in this case, it wouldn't be balancing the game itself. It would be balancing the rewards that you get out of the battle.
Yes.
So it doesn't upset the balance. It just tries to force the players into, just a better, smarter playstyle.
Like what they can do, melee infantry, as long as their friendly ranged is in a certain proximity behind them, they get support points. Boom.
Yeah, I mean, they already do get, just if you're protected by other units from a flank, from the back, you get that proximity bonus, and you get like bonus to morale, and then if your morale is more than 100%, you also get buffs to your actual melee capabilities. It already is in the game. You also get points for just being around when your teammates deal damage. But there's a small things that most players just are not aware of. So they'll not try to, maximize the rewards that they would get, because that doesn't upset the balance. Obvious. I mean, the proximity thingy that gives you confidence kind of does, but it's still a good thing, good balance point.
Yeah.
But yeah, people just need to just
Ark's idea was really good.
Which
I think Ark's idea was really good, right? Give them some support points, because I think a lot of newer players,
they're already giving them support points. Not for just being close to them, but when they deal damage. So just standing next to a ranged player when the ranged player doesn't deal damage doesn't give you points. Which I guess if you start introducing that,
they might follow more.
Yeah.
But I think
okay,
one
I'm
of the
just gonna
things
escort
is,
this range player and get some points for free without risking my unit dying. I'm gonna go for
right?
it.
I mean, you don't have to give them a ton of points, right, to where they're going to be the top on the leaderboard or anything.
Yeah, just for
But, like-
escorting archers. Yeah, that would be kind of also ridiculous. But yeah, that
Right.
is a really good
But-
idea. I like it.
But give them enough so that they're like, hey, I'm actually, I'm not losing points because I'm not in melee right now, right? Like,
Yeah.
like let's say you're a Germanicus player. Basically, at any moment when you're not, just with vengeance going, you're like, me points on the leaderboard. Where are they going? Unless you're sitting there blocking ranged. But like, I think like
That's another meme.
balance it. Obviously, maybe make it a slow ticking up number. Maybe give it bonuses if like cavalry enters a certain ring around these archers. Make it tick up more then, or something. I don't know. You can do it a bunch of different ways.
I mean, you can do it in terms of points, but so that's the design side of things. In this case, implementation is going to be just as important as the design. So what you do for implementation is you make sounds, you make prompts. You'll be like, your units will be like, we are defended, like, and that way people will be like, okay, yep, I'm getting confident, like, now I can see I'm getting those buffs. Like, make that confidence buff flash a little bit, make it part of the tutorial. Things like that will guide people and condition them towards getting that.
All you get right now is like a white arc from the flank you're getting protected from, and well, a square above your unit card showing up that you have a certain buff. Like, that's where all the buff and debuffs go. So yeah, if you make it more visible, yeah, it would maybe incentivize players more, but then maybe it would be a little bit too obstructing and distracting. That can also go both ways. So
I'm completely
so
fine with
so
that
far
as
the UI is pretty good. Also, it is pretty customizable, right? So you can always go to options and disable it if it pisses you off.
I think voice cues would be cool, like Arc
Yes.
said, where like the range players, like archers, will say something, and the melee player can hear his archers say something in the back, right?
Or just
And
we're
be like-
protecting our ranged units.
Or be like, "Thank you for supporting us," or something, right? Like,
there you go.
little things,
Yeah.
Or like, how there's emotes on like League of Legends where you press T or whatever the button is and you drag it, and it, like, I'm not saying put an emote system in, I'm just saying maybe have like a thanks for support button, or like thanks for, like, so the player can actually, like, because we play in groups, right? We constantly get positive reinforcement for that, right? My range player, if I follow his ass around, fucking loves me. At the end of the game, even though he's top frag, he'll be like, that guy protected me. And I'll be like, well, I feel like I did something nice. Thanks. I'm appreciated.
Yeah. Hey, the archer
Like-
play that I protected became MVP. I feel good about it.
Exactly. Right.
But then other players are like, see, I protected you and all got all the points. Fuck you. I'm not protecting you anymore. I won the points next battle. Screw you.
See, studies.
Hi, Jojo.
Studies always show. Studies always show positive reinforcement is always more effective in changing behavior than negative reinforcement. Now, of course, it depends on people and everything, but when in a neutral ground, like in a video game, that seems to be the case. So these kinds of things, combined with proper prompts, will push people in the way that you want them to behave, and we want them to behave in a way that will maximize their chances of winning.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Going back a little bit to the cavalry itself and how it is balanced, right? So what I want to touch upon is actually also the interactions with ranged units, but how cavalry is really bad at cutting down ranged units. Once it charges obviously obliterate archers, but they don't kill them. They deal like 80% of their HP, but they don't kill models. And then you need to stay in melee and finish them off in melee. But you deal so little damage in melee, unless you're melee barbarian cavalry, then you cut them down pretty fast. But other than that, you're killing the archers very, very slowly, which is an issue and shouldn't be the case. If archers get fucking charged, they should be dead most of the cases, right? Unless they have immediate reinforcements helping them out. But very often it
Or
is,
they
you
get
charge,
half the charge block.
yeah,
or
you
something.
charge the unit, right? You charged the enemy archers. You dealt 80% of their HP damage. Hooray, great, but you didn't kill any models. And then you try to stick around to actually capitalize on the damage you delivered, right? To start killing off the models. So you stick around, and stick around and stick around. Half minute has passed. You maybe killed 10 out of 60. Come on, kill them fast. You can. Oh no, enemy reinforcements arrived. Okay, I have to go. And I killed 15 archers. Even though I spent 1 minute with them trying to kill them as cavalry, which is also weird because they had a perfect solution for that on Steam, and then they just removed it, and the issue came back, and they never thought about returning the solution that they had, which is really weird and it's a huge step back. So please, CA, just re-implement the solution, the perfect solution you already had. Just give cavalry units bonus versus archers or ranged units. Simple as that. Just like, you should implement bonus versus large on other units versus elephants. So for example, spears, well, you kind of did that now, but still it's not consistent. Yeah, spears have bonus versus cavalry, that still exists. Why did you remove cavalry bonus versus ranged units? Or maybe, as we talked about elephants, maybe you implement a specific bonus for ranged against elephants. Try
maybe make a commander that is good at making ranged units survive charges more, but make him way weaker at actual range combat. There's some. There's some.
That's something to think about.
Oh yeah, man.
No, not really a fan of that solution, but I guess you could do that once you run out of other ideas.
Yeah.
You already have the opposite of just cavalry commander that is really good at cutting them down, which is either Sulla with Whip or Arminius with Frenzy. Because you don't really want to use Defiance as Vercingetorix against archers, kind of pointless.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you can do it as Sulla, and you don't really get any ranged.
Yeah. Also, for anybody in CA listening, Mistro is an archer player, so the fact that he's saying that cavalry should kill archers in one charge should mean something.
No, not one charge. Just, as it is right now, it's okay. But I'd also change the charge mechanic, but we'll get into later. But yeah, overall, cavalry is not strong enough against archers somehow, right? And yes, I am that archer player, and you're saying, oh, Mystery is biased towards archers because he plays archers all the time. Well, surprise, surprise, I kind of stopped playing archers and switched to cavalry because archers are in an absolute shit spot right now. And, the game isn't fun when 90% of the time you're dead or cannot do anything. So, well, I just switched to cavalry to have fun. Because of all the mobility, utility you can do, and, the mind games and outmaneuvering the opponents, which I'm really good at. But as archers, I can't really do. So I can't use that part of my skill set that well. But as cavalry, I can. So it's fun.
Is there still the score XP? I can't remember which one it was. Is there still that bonus for having separate unit types?
I think I heard it was removed, and fucking thank God. Or thank CA, I guess. Since they're removing it,
right? Like
it. Anyway, whatever the case is, whether the bonus is or isn't anymore in the game, it shouldn't be there.
Yeah, I agree. I was wondering if it was still in the game because that I did not like that.
I made an entire thread about why it shouldn't be there because it most of the time rewards you for doing the bad thing. I was like, hey, player, would you like 30% bonus as a compensation for you being weaker?
Yeah, because you can't do your role at that point.
Yeah, if you're weaker, you're hurting your entire team. You're essentially incentivizing players to hurt their entire team. That does the right thing, and the guy who does the right thing and takes 3 of the same units, he's being punished for having a shit member of his team.
Mm-hmm.
And he just, he's leeching off. The bad player is leeching off the good player. And developers are incentivizing that.
The only example I can think of where it is viable to run that idea is when you have 2 ranged and 1 melee because you don't trust your teammates to protect you. But at that point, you're not even playing a team game anymore.
Yeah, but there being an exception from the rule doesn't justify the rule being in there in the first place.
That's what I'm saying. Even the exception actually, supports the rule because it disincentivizes team play. At that point, you're playing alone.
Yeah, if you take it, right, 2 ranged units plus 1 melee unit to protect themselves, you're already getting the benefit of that, right? You're protecting yourself. You're able to protect yourself. You've already got the benefit. You don't need another 30% of a unit XP on top of that to compensate for it. You don't compensate for anything. You're already getting the benefit. right? And then if you actually compensate, well, you're weaker because you're a dumbass who took, fucking, I don't know, javelins or cavalry with Germanicus, right? Together with his melee infantry just to get the 30%. But cavalry and Germanicus, is unable to use any of the 3 of his abilities, so it is, well, close to useless, or nowhere near as useful as it would be on Scipio or even Sulla, who can still use 2 out of 3 of his abilities. But 30% bonus, that's why I took it, and I can use cavalry. Yeah, but my argument towards that is, if you have 2 players, right? Let's take Germanicus and Scipio as an example. So you want in your team 3 heavy melee infantry and 3 melee cavalry. So the best idea to take is, 3 heavy infantry with Germanicus and 3 cavalry with Scipio. That way all 6 units can use their abilities. But if you switch it around and you take 2 melee infantry with Germanicus and 1 cavalry, and then 2 cavalry with Scipio and 1 infantry, the infantry under Scipio is not going to be as effective. It can still use all 3 abilities, but Scipio is just not good at infantry.
Makes my eyes rain.
Yeah. And Germanicus, he doesn't get any abilities on cavalry, so the cavalry is way, way weaker than it was under Scipio. So you have the same commanders, the same units, but instead of having all 6 units at maximum power, you have only 4 out of 6 units at maximum power. But hey, the players are incentivized to do that because they get 30% more.
Well, I think that they also, like what we said earlier, kind of solves that problem, right? When you incentivize your melee player to actually help your ranged player with what we already stated, that guy's not going to need to take that, spear unit or whatever to guard his archers, right? I mean,
maybe that too.
You can literally fix that. I mean, obviously keep that fucking XP buff out, please God. But you can fix that just by implementing what we already talked about, and then that player is going to be like, "Yep, I'm gonna guard that dude. He's my boy."
Okay, so let's move over to another thing that is tightly connected to cavalry, and that I already mentioned, is the charge mechanics. So charge mechanics, in my opinion at least, which is a very redundant thing to say because everything I say is in my opinion, dear viewers. And just because I don't insert in my opinion doesn't mean I state it as an absolute truth. So anyway, charge mechanics are not in a very good spot at the moment, where you've got ridiculous situations where, for example, as let's say Kenan cavalry player versus Alexander cavalry player, you use your rapid advance, you outmaneuver the Alexander player, you catch him off guard, you charge him from the side, you charge him from far away because you see him, he cannot dodge your charge. You've got everything perfectly lined up, you outplayed him completely, you press the charge button, charge him, let's say from 3 seconds away, and Alexander just presses wedge, hammer, charges in a random direction and wins the charge anyway. Because he started charging like half a second before impact, while Kenan started charging 3 seconds before impact. But just because Alexander has a higher impact charge impact because of his wedge, he wins. Doesn't matter the direction, doesn't matter the timing, doesn't matter anything. He just wins.
The problem though with Alexander is his wedge formation. Like otherwise it wouldn't be a problem at all. It's only the wedge formation. Because you can't get an angle, even like if he doesn't change direction and you charge at him, like from the side, let's say from the side, because it's a wedge formation, you still get charged, or like you still get hit by a couple of his models. But like if you have a Germanicus, for example, it doesn't really matter. Like there's not really a negative impact.
No, I think there is. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, right? Because I don't play melee that much, although I play a fair bit of cavalry. And also a fair bit of infantry. I play pretty much everything apart from artillery. But let's have the same situation, just with infantry. Let's say barbarian infantry, which is low charge impact, versus heavy Roman infantry, which is a very high charge impact.
Yep.
And you can have a ridiculous situation where the barbarians charge Germanicus from the back, directly from the back, and Germanicus tries to charge away from them, right? But the few units that collide, and essentially Barbarians did charge Germanicus in the ass, Germanicus still wins that charge. Just because charge impact. It sometimes happens. Maybe if it's directly from the back, it
Never
maybe
happened
doesn't
to me.
happen.
No.
Okay.
Never happened to me.
But if it happens at an angle, like 90-degree angle or other, like if 270-degree angle, you hit him from the back somehow, but not entirely from the back, kind of from the side. The way it gets calculated is just ridiculous. And also, I think the charge impact should be more based on from when you started charging. So make it about skill, because if you charge from further away, it is easier to see, you have more time to dodge. But if the player lands the charge anyway, even if the charge lasted 5 seconds and he charged the enemy from 5 seconds away, he should get a huge reward, right? Because he hit that charge from 5 seconds away.
No.
But, well, let's say you charge frontally, right? Just cavalry versus cavalry. One cavalry charges from 5 seconds away, the other just starts charge 1 second away. So if that 1 second charging cav has a higher charge impact, it will still win the charge, despite charging for only 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, in my opinion, is wrong thing to do. Because, it either had 4 seconds to dodge, right? And you dodge, and then you charge, and the other guy cannot dodge because he doesn't have charge, for example. And the distance is much closer, right? So you cannot play it that way. But if you don't do that and you just take the charge head on, but much later, well, and you were late, you kind of slept and you should be punished. But doesn't matter the skill. I have higher charge impact. I picked a better unit, so I win.
It's true. Yeah,
so it should be more skill based.
No, I can give you an example, okay? So you have Roman heavy infantry and Germanicus as commander. And you know that fucking Germanicus has the highest charge.
It charges everything pretty much, even including cavalry.
Yeah,
correct.
So and I have, for example, like some
thing.
and I have, for example, some foxes and a Boudica as commander, who also has a charge, like a 6 second charge. Like in the old version of the game, nowadays it's like 5 to 4 seconds, depending on like what talents you pick, but doesn't really matter. And I can't win a charge against the Germanicus, so what do I have to do? Like, I try to bait out his charge. I try to basically align my units and approach him in a way that he thinks that I'm going to charge at any moment, or that I seem weak to him. Like, he's going to say, oh, this guy is stupid. He's walking like a fucking baby. I'm going to charge his ass if he just moves a little bit further in that direction he's moving in. And that's going to happen, and he's going to charge. I'm going to see it because I'm going to anticipate the charge. I'm going to dodge it, and his charge is gone, and I still have my charge left. And the same is true for like cavalry.
That's exactly the situation I described.
Yeah, but I still have less charge impact than him.
Yeah, but you either outplay the enemy by baiting out his charge and then charging yourself. But if you actually, if there is not a situation like that, if both players decide to charge, it should be more about who charged sooner rather than
it is
just
though.
No, it's not. If you're Boudica, well, maybe Boudica is not a good example because she also has a very high charge impact, right? But Miltiades, let's say, he's all about charging as well, but he has very low charge impact. So if Miltiades
because it's like
charges
more
at Germanicus and Miltiades charges him, from very far away, he gets maximum speed, maximum impact. Even if Germanicus just barely reacts to it, barely sees the player, but just turns half a second, he just needs half a second to react, to turn and charge, and then he still wins.
Yeah, but isn't it like, I guess, like normal? Because like you have like Miltiades, who has a charge on a really short cooldown. He's pretty fast as well, and his charge is dog shit. Everyone knows his charge is dog shit, except against like slingers and shit. So he's gonna not deal as much damage as like a normal charge commander like Boudica, Alexander, Germanicus, Scipio. Like, take whatever commander you want, because Miltiades is more like about mobility. It's like I have to close that fucking gap to get my hoplites in position, and then I'm going into phalanx, and not like I'm gonna charge the unit in the ass and deal 50% of his HP as damage. So I think
we agree on how the game works. We just disagree on how it should work.
Yeah, but One sec.
So, I mean, developers will have to pick one, what they think is better. And I think the skill-based charge is more important than having a statistic-based charge.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's stupid. Like, oh, I win because I have better stats instead of, oh, I win because I actually outplayed you.
But that's like normal. And I'm just going to finish like one more point, and then someone can take over. But for example, you have tier 10 matches, right? At tier 10, everyone agrees tier 10 is the end game, and you want to play tier 10. Like, if you can, I guess.
Unless you're a Celta.
Yeah. So you have tier 10 units, and you have charge impact on different units and commanders. There's only a handful of commanders that can actually ignore like any other unit, no matter what their charge impact is. And that is basically Alexander and Germanicus. That's basically it. And even those you can sometimes outmaneuver. But how it currently works in the game is if your charge impact is like 10 or 15% lower than the enemy's charge impact, you're always going to lose your fucking charge. But if they're like within those like 10 to 15%, whoever charges first wins the charge. So you have that element that you describe already in the game, but it's just for like a smaller margin of charge impact values across the units. And I actually have a Google Excel table that has like
not the spreadsheets, not the spreadsheets.
Yeah,
no.
You know the spreadsheet, and I like it. I mean, you know, okay, I can charge that unit, and I'm gonna win no matter what. So he has to play smarter to outplay me. The other way around.
Yeah, my point is that if such a discrepancy is present at 50% that you mentioned, right? First of all, most players won't be able to calculate that or remember all the stats, which is that's why one of the reasons why it's stupid, right? But it just removes one way of outplaying it, and it's like, oh, there's only one way I can't play him instead of two ways I cannot play him, which is true for most of unit interactions, right? And then you expect, oh, I outplayed, 50% of players that way by charging sooner and then just taking the charge head on, but then suddenly it doesn't work against a specific unit commander combo.
Yes, but isn't that like how it's supposed to be? Like, I mean, it's a different commander, so you have to engage the person differently. Maybe has different gear or different talents, so you have to engage him differently. You don't see his talents, you don't see his gear, but they still have an impact in the game. And you have to anticipate that. It's like a surprise moment, basically. Like, it's not like 100% all known values are in the game.
I'm 50-50 on that. Because, you need to be aware of what your, that's also part of the skill. Just clicking on the unit and looking up, okay, it's Germanicus, I need to play around him that way. If it's Sulla, I need to play around him that way. But just having that stupid tipping point with the 50%, 15% as you mentioned, not a big fan of that.
Okay, I like it.
Also, another charge mechanic that I don't like, it's also connected to charge impact, right? So I'll just change how it works. So we've talked about archers, how you charge an archer unit as a cavalry player. You run through the unit because you have enough charge impact to just run through the entire unit. And you don't kill anybody in that unit, right? They all take equal damage, all take, let's say, 80% of their HP, but after getting charged, they're all still alive. The damage is still the same, which, in my opinion, is wrong. So I would change the charge impact to also affect the damage that you deal. So at the beginning of the charge, you deal the most damage, and then as your charge impact gets lowered and lower and lowered by the enemy charge deflect, so as you plow through more and more rows of the enemy units, your damage also drops. So it would lead to a situation where, let's say, 15 out of 60, so 25% of the archer units, of the archer soldiers in the unit gets killed. Then another 15 take 80% of the damage. Another 15 soldiers, 25%, take 60% of damage, and the last 15 soldiers take 40% of damage, right?
Yeah.
So let's say there were a unit with 4 rows. Obviously, archers have more rows, so that would be, scaled between more rows, but you get the overall idea, right? So if the unit gets 4 rows, it all depends on the charge deflect, charge impact, charge damage, but you just come up with a very simple formula and you go with it. But instead, charge impact and charge damage are just completely two disconnected statistics, right? And mechanics, which shouldn't be the case.
know how to
They should
fix
be
that shit?
connected. Well,
There's
I
an
just
easy
I
fix
just
for
said
that.
what I just said how.
Yeah, but it's even easier than what you said. It's really fucking easy because right now it is like if you charge an enemy unit, you lose charge impact for each unit you hit, right? So just like correlate that
Yep,
with the
that's what I
charge
described.
damage.
Yes.
Yeah. Or the other way around, which I personally like more, is increase the charge damage of cavalry, so they can actually kill the first couple of rows of enemy archers like instantly, but as soon as you charge them. But then you lose the charge impact and the charge damage, so like the other 80% of the squad will only get knocked down but not killed, or like take damage, get knocked down but
Yeah,
not
but you
killed.
can do that with the current mechanics of them not being connected.
Yeah, exactly. So that what you said
Because
is actually a good fix.
They'll just wipe out the unit 100 to 0
Mhm.
in that case. Instead of
Yeah.
wiping out half the unit and dealing some damage to the other half. You need to tweak the charge deflect and charge impact in such a way that they would just run through half of the unit and it would kill half the unit, and the other half they would just stop. And then
Yeah.
the cavalry couldn't charge through the archer unit and instead get stuck. which
Well,
is
I
not a
think
good
they
solution.
should be able to charge through archers. I
Yeah,
think
but
they should be able
if,
to do
If
that.
they charge through archers and kill them with the current mechanic, how it works, they would just
Mhm.
kill them entirely, or kill none
Yeah.
of them. Which I want to keep the fact that they charge through archers, right, and then
Mhm.
don't get stuck.
Yeah.
But they kill a portion of
Less.
them.
Yeah, like
Well,
kill
they
a portion of
some.
them, but
So the overall
yeah,
damage stays the same, right?
yes. But he loses units.
Yeah,
Like
but,
the archer
but he
uses units.
models.
Yeah.
So
I
just,
agree.
just connect the two statistics: charge, charge impact with charge, charge damage, and also charge deflect. But those are already connected.
Yeah.
Just roll with that. What do you guys think? Astolfo,
I like.
Arcleon,
I mean, on
or
one
any
hand,
other
I like
issues
it.
with charges that you have?
I do. I have one issue, and I think, like, I was a big fan of countercharging. Especially, I used to main Germanicus. So, countercharging cavalry and knowing how the charge mechanics were, giving that huge advantage, I really like that. I really like the charge being based on momentum rather than some arbitrary stats, because it results in situations where the result just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, like heavy infantry turning on the spot, charging for half a second, and winning the charge against cavalry that was charging for
Exactly.
half a minute.
Exactly. Yes. So I think momentum really solves that, because what do we want from a charge? We want it to be, the unit's charge ability, its mass, and its speed to be included. So we can just modify the momentum values. There can
just
be
to clarify, mass equals charge impact, essentially.
Yes, there we go. We can do it a lot like that. Mass equals charge impact. Multiply that by speed equals to amount of damage you're going to deal to the units. Now, it might require a bit of balancing when it comes to charging full, like, entire units, because the first guy you would hit in a charge would almost get disintegrated, while the next one would take a lot less damage. But I think such mechanic is already in the game, so just make it based on momentum, because with your heavy infantry, those guys are heavy, so with proper speeding up, they should be able to outcharge a cavalry that has just started charging. They should take damage, but probably deal more damage to the enemy because they have won that charge, so to speak. Like, winning a charge was not a clear-cut thing back in the day, and I kind of liked it.
Yeah, I think there were some patch notes within which they described that. Well, there was a patch where they reworked. They added the charge impact and deflect, or maybe reworked them because they were there before but kind of hidden. I don't remember the exact details.
Disclose how it worked, basically.
There was a charge rework patch, essentially. Just like there was morale rework patch and all the other patches, like range and friendly fire rework 3.1. So anyway, they did describe that they want to do that. Like, if you charge earlier, that is important. if your unit charges from being stationary or it charges from being, full speed. That also matters. That's how they described it, but it doesn't feel that way in the game itself. How it feels in the game itself is that charge impact is all that matters. And the speed factor, you just don't feel it.
It doesn't matter at all. The speed factor doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Like,
well, it should. I mean, the developers
yeah.
claimed that it does. You just don't see it, or it just doesn't work.
That would
Yeah,
be a unintended nerf to Boudica, though, so they might want to change ambush if they do that because she loses movement speed.
Well, it's like, I think what they meant is like according to your how to say it, like the percentage difference between your normal movement speed and what you actually have. Like it doesn't really matter if you start with low movement speed if your like maximum movement speed is low.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys. I was just saying in that specific scenario, maybe like tone down the like movement speed debuff on ambush or something. Then
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is
basically, speed should matter more, charging earlier should matter more, and charge impact should matter less. That is, I think, our overall conclusion to that.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think
And
like
that charges, charge impact and charge damage should be connected rather than disconnected.
But I still think, like, for example, barbarians, I mean, they're pretty fast, so their charge would be stronger as well, or like pretty strong as well. But they
the
don't have
charge
much
impact
mass.
suck.
Yes. So their
Yeah.
momentum, their final impact is not as high. So that all
Yes.
seems
Yeah,
legit.
I mean, as it is right now, like barbarian charge absolutely sucks, apart from Boudica Fury, right? And
Yes,
Foxman.
definitely.
That is the exception. But all the other just barbarian infantry charging in the back of Roman infantry. So let's say Roman infantry is already engaged, right? It's fighting, it's stationary, and you charge barbarian infantry straight up the Roman's ass. And
Yeah,
that
it
charge
doesn't do any damage.
Yeah, that charge doesn't
And
do
that's-
any damage.
I
to
like
the
it though. I
for me, it's
honestly,
stupid.
I like it.
It's an infantry charge in your ass while you're engaged. You outplay
Yeah,
the opponent.
but-
Yes, you get the reflank, you get all the bonuses other than that, but the charge itself should also deal some damage, especially
I
if
think
it's straight in the back.
as long as you route them, you get the damage either way.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Like barbarians are meant
As
to
long
route
as you
enemies, so
route
the
it, but-
charge is pretty
Yes,
low
but a
in damage.
charge in the ass should be a charge in the ass, and it should deal damage. Just like ranged units shooting you in the ass should deal more damage than just AP.
Yeah.
Even
But I
if,
don't
if,
think, like,
even
it
if
should
you're
be
Roman
absolute-
infantry, even if you're Roman infantry, if I shoot you in the back, even with a slinger, you should take a little bit more than just AP.
You know,
damage.
that can also
Oh,
be
yeah.
fixed within
Totally.
the purview of our suggested fix,
Yeah.
which would be the momentum. So the way the charge damage can be calculated
Yeah,
is
I mean
through
that's
the
what we were
difference-
talking about in the first place.
is through the difference between the momentum of the units. That way, if a unit was not moving and its back turned, yeah, that's going to do a lot of damage. But still, if the unit is heavy, it would logically would not do as much damage. So I think that just satisfies everybody, and
But
that's
isn't
sort
it
of how
like-
it works.
But shouldn't then, for example, if the Roman infantry is moving away from you and you charging him in the ass, shouldn't your charge deal less damage then because
No.
he's moving away and so the relative
Yeah, I
movement
mean
speed is
it's
less?
basic physics lesson,
Yeah.
basic formula.
No.
of-
Here's why.
Yes,
Here's
it's
why.
about the
What you are
vector
forgetting-
in which you're moving, and speed and mass. That's literally impact
Yeah.
formula.
Yeah,
Here's why. Yes, impact formula, but impact formula accounts for singular entities. We are not
Yeah.
talking about singular entities. So the men in the back will take that damage, and they should take that high damage because they're getting stabbed in the back with a giant foxes, so that will probably hurt.
Yeah.
But the men who did manage to get away will not take that damage.
I mean that's
Overall
obvious
result.
because they don't even get touched in the first place.
Mhm. There you go. So the
I mean,
calculation
we
is the
never
same.
said it
There
isn't
is
the
no
case,
problem
Arcleon,
to
so I don't know what you are arguing here.
What I'm getting here is that specific case is not an exception to the rule here. It will work during the implementation.
That's true.
Also, I wasn't giving a situation where they're running away. They're just literally stationary, right?
Yeah, in
Yeah.
the case of stationary, I'm pretty much on your side. Yeah.
But I don't think that, like, for example, barbarian units should be able to charge deep into the Roman infantry unit from the back.
Correct.
Yeah, but just
Yep.
deal
Yeah.
any damage. at
Yeah,
all.
exactly. Yeah,
That charge
okay.
like literally just tickles them, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, it should take out the back flank.
Yeah, I remember. I think it's even in the Akram's video, like 10 tips you should know before playing Arena, something like that. I don't remember the exact title, but if you Google that, it's on like official Total War Arena channel, which I provided a clip of to him. Where at Thermopylae, I go into forest as barbarians, and there is an enemy pike unit. So I do what barbarians do, right, or what they actually do instead of what they're supposed to do. I have a friendly player occupying the pikes from the front, and I just take my 2 units, one flanks from the left or right, left, and the other flanks from the rear, instant rout, and then I deal the damage. But I also charged, and the charge damage was literally just single digit numbers. And only after the routed, I started dealing the real damage.
Yeah.
Which is, you completely rely on the round. But if you don't route, the charge itself doesn't deal any damage, and then, in melee they just turn around and start fighting you normally, which you also lose because you're light infantry versus heavy infantry. So that charge absolutely should deal more damage. Also, in terms of like infantry versus infantry engagements, where let's say you even have 2 Germanicus just charging head on each other. Same unit state, same stats, same everything. Right, so what happens right now, they both charge, they both take damage, and then the few first rows just entangle each other. And then if you want to disengage, you suffer a huge penalty for trying to pull out, because you're few rows deep into the enemy formation, and then as you're retreating, you're losing all of that pretty much, because they quickly get cut down. If you were to implement the new charge mechanics with charge impact and charge damage being lowered as you go and higher at the beginning, you would just kill off maybe the first few rows, depending on the units, obviously, right? So maybe Germanicus wouldn't be the case, but some other combination it would. So then you have overall less entanglement and less punishment for pulling back. And that's just a question whether you want that or not. I'm not saying either is better than the other. It's just which you want, and as a developer, which you think is better.
To be honest, like if you charge someone and you knock the units to the ground and you walk over them and then they stand up again, that's like not really what's happening in real life. Like you're gonna stab those guys on the ground and then they're dead. They're not gonna stand up again if you charge them.
There's actually an anecdote about that back from Steam when I was playing Artillery. We literally just started playing the game, right? So we had no idea how things work. So there was, I think, an enemy testudo. I shot it with like burning coal consumable for my artillery. It has an explosion effect. It literally knocked down the entire testudo down. So everybody was on the ground. So I tell my friend who was playing Cavalry, I think on Alexander even in Wedge, I was like, yo, go quickly charge him. He's knocked down, right? You're gonna deal a lot of damage. It's okay, yeah. Because once he gets out, his charge would just get stuck in the testudo, right? But while he's on the ground, it's like, hey, you're just gonna run him over and deal the damage, and he just runs over, nothing happens. I was like, what the hell just happened? You literally trampled over him and nothing happened. So I guess that's also kind of an issue with soldiers on the ground being invulnerable to damage.
It's like counterintuitive, like for a new player.
Yeah, I mean,
once you know that only elephants can trample down enemies, then yeah, it's fine. But like the first couple of moments, it's like, what the fuck is going on?
I mean, they trample on them whether they're standing or laying on the ground anyway, so that doesn't really matter. There was a ability on Miltiades for a while that was replaced later on by break ranks. I think it was called Slaughter. So the general idea was that you charge, and then you use Slaughter on those units that are knocked down. Also, the first general idea was on Knane. That ability was on Knane originally. So you were supposed to charge with Cavalry as Knane, with her own charge, and then kill them off as Cavalry. But then that ability made it onto Miltiades after the wargaming transition. But it was shit. People wanted, hey, I liked Miltiades for his unique playstyle of being fast dude with phalanx, right? And back then it was drop shields, which, probably wasn't ideal because it was, you drop shields and then you have to commit 100% to that playstyle, right? Well, now it is just break ranks and you can switch freely between being in break ranks, phalanx, or normal.
I still enjoyed that idea, though.
Yeah, I really like drop shields as well, yeah. But I think break ranks is better. Maybe the only thing I would change is give it some kind of a bigger cooldown. So once you press that break ranks, if you fuck up, right, you're locked into that break ranks for, let's say, half a minute.
I think 30 seconds is a bit long because you have to break ranks to charge.
I mean,
to get
it's
damage.
just an example. Make it 5, 10 seconds, whatever. Just make it some cooldown. Right now, I think there isn't any. Right, you just switch it on and off, or it's so short that you don't even notice it.
Yeah. True.
Same thing as we discussed with Pike Phalanx, where Pike Phalanx you have 6 seconds window. It's too short. It's too easy for the Pike player, too hard for the player that tries to outmaneuver him. Okay, so that's charge mechanics. And as I mentioned Pikes, let's quickly touch upon melee detection and unit coherency. We also touched upon it in the previous podcast, so we'll quickly power through it. But essentially, melee detection sucks. You have situations where, Leonidas, just shield bash, Pike Phalanx immediately. That's ridiculous. Please stop it. You have situations where, for example, as a ranged player, right? Maybe you got attacked. Some of your archers got knocked down by a charge, but you run away with 95% of your unit. But just because one guy is entangled somewhere and he is engaged, your whole unit is detected as in melee, even though that guy is completely dispatched from the unit. It's just some random guy trying to run back to the main unit, right? Your unit will be detected as in melee and therefore cannot use focus fire, even though all the other soldiers are free to do so. So I would change, at least in that situation, because you have that like outline around the unit, at least if you enable it in options. I don't know if you can enable and disable it, but I think you can. So if that's soldier that got stuck somewhere in melee engagement, right, and cannot go back, but if he's far away from the main body unit, he gets dispatched away from there, and he's not even displayed on in the bottom left corner where the unit formation is shown. So you just ignore that soldier then until he returns to the formation. So then it doesn't matter if he's just one alone guy being engaged. He doesn't prevent the other 59 guys from using focus fire. Same with Pike formation, right? You have the exact same issue. One Pike dude gets stuck somewhere. 99 pikemen are ready and waiting to drop Pike Phalanx, but they can't because one guy got stuck on a tree and he's getting hammed by another barbarian player in the forest. And then 99 guys can go into Pike Phalanx. Another ridiculous situation. And then somehow, it's mainly to do with Pike Phalanxes, right? You engage that Pike Phalanx, you charge them. It's like, haha, I outplayed you. I caught you off guard when you didn't have your pikes down. So instead of pikes down, I caught you with your pants down. Ha 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 ha. And he's like, well, nope, I'm actually not in melee. But well, you were in melee. Stop spinning to winning. No. So yeah, please fix melee detection.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
Since this section's melee detection and unit coherency, something to touch upon in unit coherency, something that I really enjoyed about Hashtable, and probably the only reason why I got him to tier 10, to be honest, is because you could pack his formation more densely than the Greeks can, and you could push through their phalanx with it. I liked that.
Spicy phalanx versus phalanx.
I actually really liked that mechanic. And I didn't know what stat in the game was doing it. If it was just because I had more characters pushing against, if it was mass, if it was something as simple as that mine is medium spears or heavy spears and his were light spears or medium spears.
Yeah, but what you're describing here is just unit formations rather than unit coherency, right? What I mean by unit coherency are the issues that are caused by units being all over the place.
Yeah, exactly.
So another annoying issue that I already pointed out in the previous podcast, but whatever, I'm going to quickly bring it up here as well, is that when you try to split up your units, right? You have 3 units in 3 different places. You split them up, and then you try to select your units by clicking and dragging over them. If you do that, right, you clearly have just one unit over here, click and drag, I want that unit to be selected. You don't know if it's your 1, 2, or 3 unit, right? So you ignore that, you just want to select that unit by clicking and dragging.
Yeah, multi-selects them because there's one guy out of place.
Exactly. Just because one guy got entangled in your friendly unit, and let's say it's a high pressure situation, you need to react very quickly, so you don't have time to precisely click that unit banner or switch between a 1, 2, 3 to see which one it is. You need to react very quickly, and therefore click and drag is the fastest way to do it, right? And you do it correctly, but because one, for example, cavalryman got entangled in that unit, so you okay, lining up charge here with this unit, lining up here with this unit. Okay, select this unit and charge, select this unit and charge. But then you select 2 units and charge with 2 units, and then you fuck up one of the charges because one guy got entangled.
Yeah.
So the same solution as with melee detection, pretty much. Just if the guy is completely dispatched from his unit, even though he gets within that click and drag area, just ignore him and just select 1 unit. God damn it.
Yeah.
Make it based on the unit IDs. So you need to click and drag over the unit ID, and only those unit IDs that were within the click and drag selection, those units get selected.
Honestly, it should be a single line of code, the whole thing.
Also, the unit, but the unit IDs also sometimes go all over the place because of the unit coherency issues, and because also of how the unit ID collision when the units are very close to each other works. So that also leads to unit IDs sometimes teleporting across the monitor screen, for example, or across the battlefield.
Where I was going with the thing where I was talking about why I liked hashable and stuff, a lot of the reason why that you would win that is because of poor coherency on the Greek spears side, right? Because you would push through them, and then the flanks of their units would just start freaking out. They'd be like, do I go forward? Do I go back? What's going on? And then suddenly you massacre the whole unit because, theoretically you should be killing the troops in the middle where your formation is dense, right? But you ended up killing the guys on the flanks because they would get overextended and they'd get the pull-through penalty, and they'd just be like, oh, I've fallen out of coherency. It's time to fall over and die now.
Yeah, that's what also I don't like when I play Spearman. So you go into phalanx and you push through an enemy unit, right? But your phalanx formation is wider than the enemy you're pushing. So obviously the units in the middle that get to fight, they get stopped and they get pushed back while they're fighting, while the other guys on the flanks just keep advancing, right? When you go forward,
they run.
And you can't really tell them to go in like just slightly towards the middle of the formation, because of very often there's just an obstacle that just doesn't let you tell your unit to go there. Because if you try to right click there or right click and drag, you can't, because there's an enemy unit there. So you can do it, which I also described in the previous podcast. So you need to have an alternative movement control. When, for example, you hold control, you hold alt, you hold shift, whatever, just a button or a key rather. All right, and then that enters a free movement mode. So even if you right click on an enemy unit while in that alternative movement mode, you don't attack the unit, you just walk there. That would fix a lot of issues with phalanx, but it also just just phalanx combat, right? The guys on the flanks push further than the guys in the middle, and then you want to you try to get them back into the formation, but then they get entangled and they get attacked from the front, and then you end up not knowing in which direction you should push, because no matter in which direction you push, some of your formation will be attacked in the back.
Yeah.
Which negates the entire point of the high skill play that you do with pushing back and forth, phalanx fast, shield bash if you have it.
Especially if you have high fatigue, those guys on the flanks just poof, 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 explode.
Yeah. I mean, I'm no expert on how to manage fatigue and the entire phalanx, so I won't go deeper into it. I play, phalanx casually, not on a professional level, like Jojo, for example, right? This guy knows his phalanx, knows how to manage them, and he does it really, really well. Well, I just do it casually. I know, my stuff, my way around phalanx, but I don't stand a chance on a deeper level.
On the topic of phalanx, it'll take 2 seconds. Take out the heal on hashable, please, God.
Yeah, so we need to invite Jojo when we are going to talk about phalanxes, I guess, in the future.
Oh, yeah.
Or just anything else. Just get Jojo on the podcast. Okay, so any other things about metal detection and coherency? Arcleon, Falx, you want to add something?
No, there's nothing on ranged or particularly heavy infantry that we haven't covered already.
Yeah. So next issue, just also brief mention. that I somehow don't understand. How the hell do you do that? Is slingers firing arcs. A very clear issue where you have a slinger unit and there is some kind of cliff involved most of the time, or just a hill, just some kind of, you know, obstacle terrain. And the game doesn't let you shoot the enemy for right click, but if you use focus fire, you can entirely. Like, not a single rock gets stuck on any obstacle. You know, you can just shoot there. But right click, nope, you can't. Focus fire, no problem. Yeah, so there's multiple instances like that where the game just doesn't let you shoot as slingers, which makes slingers a much weaker unit than archers. That's why a lot of people just play archers, because slingers very, very often just cannot shoot at all. For example, on a map like Alpes Graya, when there's a hill in the middle that you very often fight for, if slingers don't get on top of that hill, they're close to useless. So they need to be either on top of that hill or very far away from that hill. But if you get stuck somewhere in between, you're fucked and you're useless. While, you know, if you just shoot with focus fire, no problem. But focus fire only comes up every 8 seconds. Well, you could shoot like 4 volleys in that time. So yeah, simple problem, I guess simple solution, just fucking fix the firing arc detection. And there we go.
True.
And I guess there are many, many more mechanics that we could bring up here. So do you guys have any from the top of your heads?
I mean, in general, it's like the firing arc is like dog shit for slingers. Like,
Yeah,
even you have to have a stupid long range, but you can't utilize it. Like, hardly any time you can utilize it.
Yeah, I mean, if the
So-
firing arc on regular attacks, right, regular volleys, was as good as it is on focus fire, then it would just be good. It would just be balanced. But as it
Yeah.
is right now, with, I don't know if it's the bug or just a stupid design decision, then yeah, archers are just much better, because archers can shoot pretty much in every situation, apart from very few when there's actually a huge obstacle between you and the enemy. But other than that, they can always shoot, while slingers can pretty much almost never shoot unless they're in a perfect position. So yeah, just fix the firing arc for slingers, and slingers will be viable. They won't be stronger than archers, but they won't be much weaker as as they are right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so only 1 month remains for the closed beta. At least we think it is closed beta. They didn't really specify that, but you have signups, and it is supposed to be 24/7. Well, it comes on 23rd of September. So do you guys think it will be 24/7, or because China, there will be some restrictions?
I hope it will be 24/7, to be honest. Like, dude, like those 5 hours per day, it was horrible. Literally horrible.
I literally can't play. Like I'm on.
Yeah, it's in the middle of in the night for Americans. So-
it's freaking 4 a.m. Like I can't do that.
I wonder
Exactly.
if because it can be 24/7, but there can be restrictions. So I don't know the exact Chinese law, but they have something that they can only play X amount of hours per day.
Like,
Oh,
gambling
So you
games, I
don't do
believe.
that. The servers are open between those 5 hours, right? Like we had, I think Chinese time it was 5 to 10 p.m. Chinese time. That doesn't really matter, right? But 5-hour window. But you still have a counter per account. It's like, well, you on this account you can only play 5 hours per day, and then it resets at midnight or whatever. So they can still do that kind of restriction, and I wouldn't be heavily against it if it's 5 hours. I think it's good,
Yeah, 5 hours a day.
but
I mean,
preferably there just wouldn't be any. But if there have to be, do it like that, just 5 hours, but whenever you want. But that also introduces an issue, of time zones, because previously,
I mean,
when you had just 5 hours window to play at all, right? It's that you play within those 5 hours, so you don't. That at least forces everybody, no matter where they are, into the same playing window. But once you make service available 24/7, the prime time for Chinese, which is, let's say, at 5 to 10 p.m., that's middle of the night for Americans, and early morning for Europeans.
Yep.
So
Well, another thing you think about,
Europeans
right?
and Americans trying to play in prime time will have very, very long queues because, well, the Western population will be much, much, much lower than it was.
Assuming if that will be the case, because I mean, do we even know how popular Total War is in China?
I mean, it doesn't really matter if Europeans try to play in their prime time, right? So after we came back from work after 5 p.m., that's middle of the night in China.
Also, it doesn't mean that they're gonna market to only Chinese. We just don't know yet. They will probably go for the largest demographic they can.
I think
no,
another thing
because
too
because
is,
how it is, they just sold it to NetEase at the moment, distribution rights, and NetEase only distributes in China officially, right? So officially, they're only going to market it to Chinese. They're only going to, do the Chinese support and everything, and they just do a nice gesture towards the Western players, the fans of the game, and allow us to play, right? But officially, they don't know anything about it, kinda.
But CA is still the one developing it.
Yeah,
And
but
we don't know.
I mean, a company can develop whatever game they want and sell it whatever the hell they want, which in this case is a British company wanting to sell this game in China only. At least
Yep.
officially, wink, wink. All right.
well, the other thing too is with I hate the 5 hour rule, right? Because I'm never in their prime time, so I'm just not gonna play the game if it's a freaking I have to be there at 4 a.m. It's just not gonna happen.
I
And
mean, you
then
can still
B,
try to play in European prime time, which should be good enough, but just barely. Probably still gonna have a very long queue.
B, most people actually get their free time on the weekends, right? So if I want to play more than 5 hours on Friday and Saturday, I should be able to do that because I didn't play during the week. I get that in China you have 5 hours or per day or whatever, but I'm already dealing with a time zone thing where I might not be able to play the game at all. And then on top of that, I'm dealing with ping issues. On top of that, I'm dealing with probably low players on at the time I play. So it's probably going to be long queues. And, if I can't just play the duration I would like on the weekend, like, when am I going to actually play the game? What am I going to play it 10 hours a week? Best case scenario, Friday, Saturday?
I mean, how we can actually remedy that as a community, just make a statement towards our Western community, like, queue times are going to be a huge issue because of the big time zone difference, especially between China and America, which is how much exactly it is? More than 12 hours, right? So it's exactly the opposite time of day, essentially, depending on where in America you are. So, I mean, the more reasonable, obviously, is the European prime time, because European prime time is morning for America, but American prime time is middle of the night for Europeans. So, yeah, I mean, I always take it into account when I organize tournaments, right? I organize tournaments for Europeans plus Americans, so it's always European evenings and American mornings, because that's the only way you can do it. Otherwise, it's American evening and European middle of the night, which is definitely less ideal. So yeah, we just need to, as a community, get together and, go like, hey, guys, all the Western arena players, let's try to, get a gentleman's agreement going that we'll play arena between this time and this time so that we can lower the queue times for ourselves.
I mean,
right?
yeah,
especially if you would have the limited time play, because if you don't, you can just play all the time, right? But if you have like, okay, I will play arena today for 2 hours, and I can either play in the morning or I can play in the evening. But then, the community was saying that, yeah, we should play in the evening because then that's when the most Western players will be playing. So let's do that, right? Instead of playing in the morning. But I guess if you were to play with the morning, you would just play with Chinese guys. So you will still be fine.
Yeah, but I mean, that assuming only works on the weekends, right? Because I'm going to be, working or,
Yeah,
So you really can only play the game one day a week, because even on a Friday, technically the weekend, you're still working Friday morning.
I mean, this is also
Yeah,
assuming
for Americans
that-
it's really hard, but Europeans can just play in their evenings, and we should be fine.
Wait a minute. As far as I know, you have limited amount to play. You don't specifically have to spend that time in Chinese prime time. What I'm trying to say is you might still be able to get enough players to get a decent amount of queue, even if
I mean, I'm talking about European prime time. I'm playing in European prime time at the moment, so we get to play with Americans who can play in the morning, while China is mostly asleep. Because that's the best time for Western players, if we just ignore the Chinese. But Chinese also are going to be the factor, right? There's always going to be a few guys playing it for the middle of the night.
I don't know. I would just leave them 24/7, and it's up to.
Yeah, it is open 24/7, but it's the question, when do you play to avoid huge queue times? Because if Americans try to play in their prime time, then that's very early morning in China and middle of the night in Europe. So if Americans try to play in their prime time, they're gonna run into very, very long queue times. So what I'm saying is that as a community, we should make it known, especially to the Americans, that they should try to play in the morning, because then they can get better queues instead of trying to play in prime time. Obviously, not everyone is going to be able to do it, but those that can should, right? If you catch my drift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about it. We still have quite a while until the release. We probably are going to release another podcast episode before that happens, or maybe we'll just publish the podcast for the release day. We'll see. Speaking of release days, well, this is going to be closed beta, as we said, because you still need to sign up for it and everything. So by definition, it is closed, although pretty much everybody gets the key who signs up. So it's kind of like open beta. You just have that stupid additional step where you actually need to sign up. So yeah, when do you think we're gonna get open beta release, an actual open beta? And will they try to aim it's really up to us, right? Because closed beta, that's obviously Chinese only. But with Chinese open beta, may also come back, Western open beta, because they say, hey, Chinese version is being played by Europeans and Americans, and they really want their own servers so that they can, get to play, don't have the queue time issues that they have, and ping issues and all the other issues they have. So yeah, we're bringing it back, but we need to make it known to CA. So anyway, we get closed beta towards the end of September. When would you guys expect open beta, and what that open beta would entail?
What I'm hoping it would entail, the design will no longer center around who is going to publish it. Like, I'm actually glad that NetEase took over, and from the looks of it, they're actually kind of being a more hands-off, because even back from the Steam days, it felt very World of Tanks in its design. And that just does not work well with this game. That's pretty much all I sort of want to see when it comes to release. Let it take as long as it does.
Yes, sir. I agree.
I also agree. I think, it doesn't really matter when it comes out, because we've all played the game. We know that the changes between open beta and closed beta, the absolute biggest change possible would be a new faction. And so, that's not really anything for us. I mean, we can learn the new faction, but pretty much just CA's work that they have to do, It doesn't really impact us.
I guess as long as it comes back to the West, it doesn't matter when it does. I mean, obviously, the sooner the better, I guess, but maybe not even necessarily. To be honest, right? If more time before the Western re-release, the Western comeback, the more patches they will be able to publish. Because what is important is how much the game will change, the balance, and all the issues being fixed that we talked about. Because if they were to bring back Arena to the West, as it is right now, right, or how it will be with the new patch that we don't know the details of yet, but it's safe to assume that all the issues that we've talked about here will not be fixed in that patch. It's pretty obvious, right?
Yeah.
So if they were to return like that to the West, players who have played Arena before it died, they would come back and see, well, there's a new game mode, but elephants are still broken, pikes are still broken, heavy artillery is still broken, right? The charge mechanics are still not good. The melee detection unit coherency still doesn't feel right. So yeah, they changed the game mode, but all the other issues that I had with the game are still not fixed, even though, you know, it was 2 years and I had time to fix it. So yeah, I would say fix all of those issues, or at least most of them, or at least not fix, but improve on them, at least at the very, very least improve on them. And then show the Western players, once you return to the West, an actual improvement. They'll be like, whoa, okay, now that's a game I can invest my time into. Because the first impression that you make on the players, and that return will not be the very first impression, but it'll be first impression in quite a while, is still very important. That is one of the issues I pointed out last time in one of the previous podcasts, that when they opened up the game, when they announced closed beta on Wargaming and started inviting a lot of players, they announced, the promoted Arena on Gamescom. That was back when pathfinding was absolutely broken, where your units couldn't walk straight around the corner, or even just straight not around the corner. They would just do all weird things, and that is the state of the game you show for the first time to a huge amount of players, and they just get put off by it. Right, so obviously the game is in much better state than it was back then, with the broken pathfinding, which is, an essential part of playing the game, is moving your units, for fuck's sake.
You touch upon to a very.
But it needs to be at least, fleshed out in terms of balance and core mechanics, and then you can show that, hey guys, we may have not introduced many new features, we have introduced a new game mode, but we fixed all the balance issues, right? And then, well, let's try it out, the new balanced fixed version of the game. Do you like it? You like it? Okay, here's a new feature, here's a new game mode, here's another new feature, here's this, here's that, and here's more content, new faction, just like World of Warships does, right? They iron out their issues. I mean, they didn't, but let's say they did. And now they're introducing new content all the time, and that's how they keep the game alive. Right, so they need to use the Chinese downtime, let's say, like it's the Western, it's downtime for the Western audience, essentially. So use that time when the Western audience doesn't see what the hell is happening in Arena, most of them at least, fix all the issues, right, and then come back to that Western audience with a very, very polished game, and then keep the game alive in the West by producing new content. Because that's also one of the biggest factors that killed Arena back then. It was the lack of the new content and just player base slowly getting bored.
Yeah. I think something that they could do as well, I mean, actually, I don't know if they can do this. I don't know what their, contracts, their, agreements, all the things that they've agreed to or whatever. I don't know what that entails, right? But, I mean, I would think you could. It's not like, you can't make a few servers for North America or Europe, right? And have them just play with the Chinese. That's like, you already know how to make the servers. You did it how many times before? Yeah, you might even still have the servers. They might just be powered down. Who knows? I don't know how that works.
But like random.
But if you get. I don't, unless there's something contractually stopping them from doing that, like it's a very low input of effort to, make your Western audience's life so much easier. I don't know. But, again, it might be like, well, you can't do that because exclusive NetEase, exclusive Chinese product, I don't know. I'm not their contract lawyer.
Yeah, it all depends on the contract. So right now it would all be speculation. I do hope that they can develop, and from the looks of it, they're given a lot bigger leeway in terms of designing. They are not bound to like, oh yes, we are making this for wargaming. Wargaming players is our target audience, therefore we must make it familiar to them. Here, no, we're just trying to make a good game. And yeah, the conquest mode would probably not the first one I would go for, but I can definitely see why people would go. That would be my second one, but it's definitely good. I just love the design. It always has the smart design.
And to
So-
answer Astolfo's question, right, about the possibility of American servers, even if that was a possibility, even if they did that, right, even when it was the case back on Steam, back on Wargaming, the American population was just too low, and they ended up playing with Europeans anyway on the European server, and you still had the increased ping. So you would have the same situation. Even if they introduced an American server, it would be very, very rare to find an American-only game that would actually be able to be played on the American server. I mean, European server might work, but as much.
I mean, you say that, but I never had a queue time. Like, I was never in queue for more than 23 to 40 seconds, ever.
Yeah, because also that's how matchmaking works. Maybe if they got you a much longer queue time, right, to prioritize playing on the same server, then they would probably find a game just full of Americans being able to play on American server.
I mean,
But
even when I
that's not
played with
matchmaking,
Europeans, my ping was never higher than
processes.
70.
I mean, think
I know.
about it.
It's fine.
because
American ping to
it
Europe and
routes-
vice versa is not problem. The problem is ping to China.
Well, it's because it's routed through my server, right? That's closer. If I was directly connecting to, like, let's say a Berlin server, I would still have 260 ping.
Probably.
It's just that it can skip from a closer server, that it reduced it a ton. I don't know how they set it up or whatever, but I mean, I never had more
set
than
up a
like
secret.
70 to
You
100
just set up a
ping ever.
secret server in the CA headquarters, and there we go. And then maybe there will be some games between Europeans and Americans only that can be played.
And I
on
don't
that
even
server.
mind playing with the Chinese all the time. I would just like to be able to play at not 468 ping, which was what my ping was during the private test.
Well, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see, because technology has advanced, server architectures have advanced, a lot of things have changed. We don't know what
Yeah,
they're
and
doing.
the Chinese
But
law
we're
is
expecting.
regressing instead.
Yeah, but U.S. internet infrastructure is doing nothing.
Yes, because
Yeah,
that's
it is quite garbage.
okay. Because let's admit, United States is a third world country wearing a first world country's coat.
I
In
mean,
terms of internet providers, yes.
my internet provider is just sad, and it's the only one in the area.
Yeah,
Yep,
you've got a
that's-
Wait
huge
till
issue with
Starlink comes
monopolies.
up, dude.
Oh yeah, basically in my building, I gave Spectrum a giant middle finger and turned our entire building into its own ISP, and I love it. Sure,
Nice,
the
dude.
landlord had to pay a lot. Sure, the landlord had to pay a lot by just giving them that middle finger, and landlord actually makes a ton of bank out of the service, even though I'm the one maintaining it. So, like, there is a way out as long as we can stand up to our corporate overlords. But the day that happens is the way comes to the world.
I
comes
mean,
to an end.
that's a similar thing that I did. I didn't set up my own server or whatever, but yeah, I had a LTE internet radio connection, right, 4G or whatever, and because I live on the outskirts, the connection was just very, very, very bad. And then I got a cable internet, so no problem. But recently it has been fucking up, and as you saw in the middle of this podcast, I got disconnected once. And I was like, hey, am I back? Am I back? Oh, I'm back. Hey, great. Yeah.
I mean, my internet's really slow, but it's never had ping issues. Like, I play at like 60 to 70 ping on, League of Legends in most games, right?
Yeah, because
So,
this doesn't
like-
require much data transition.
All right. But the second I was on the arena one, like 468, I mean, I basically just gave up on
I
charges.
mean, that's because China. I also have 200 to 300 ping. Because China. Because it's far away.
Also, it's probably they're not using their best servers for testing a game that has already failed.
Maybe.
I know I wouldn't.
But anyway, well, we I think exhausted all the topics. So let's finish
I
the
do
podcast
have
here.
one thing.
Oh,
I do have one
Go.
thing. Yes. What did they do with premium units?
At the moment, I think they are
Guessing
disabled,
it's gonna
but
be worse.
I mean, yeah, because I think the law even prohibits it to have the premium
Sweet.
units. Yeah, you just cannot have premium units during testing, right? During such testing, but in here, closed beta, 24/7, I think they can reintroduce them. I mean, they
Okay,
just didn't have a shop; they didn't have a way to buy gold anyway. So
I don't mind, like, I actually want cosmetics and stuff, right, in the game, but like the whole, I'm just kind of a little bit afraid on that topic because I know like gacha games and like mobile games and like constantly pay to win is just huge in the East. I mean, I've played a ton of MMOs from the East that were amazing games
FGO
and
is a
that were
great gacha game, just saying.
absolutely ruined.
But FGO is single player, so nobody cares.
Like, I don't know, let's say like I don't know, BDO, BNS. If you don't know the things, it's Black Desert and Blade and Soul, both Eastern MMOs, both had great gameplay. And they were just completely, absolutely ruined by their monetization. And yeah, I get it. Like, it's successful over there. And, you know, I just hope they don't go too hard.
I mean,
down that
Wargaming
path.
has a terrible monetization, and yet they're doing well, sadly. I think they shouldn't be doing well, but people are stupid, and Wargaming is absolutely capitalizing on it. But, well, it's not touching Arena anymore, so I guess we don't care. Let's just hope that CA will learn the lesson and not try to follow Wargaming in terms of their monetization models. But anyway, well, we've already made podcast about it, and maybe we'll make it again in the future. But this podcast has run for long enough. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Thank you guys for joining me, Astolfo, Foxy, Arkliden. Great to have you here, and I'll hope to host you again on future podcasts.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, where we get to talk all about monetization or whatever the hell we want. So yeah, see you there.